chair and vice chair affirmation whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, just to cover some quick opening comments. This is the first time we've actually met in person, probably in, 4 months? And then before that, probably about a year. So I'm glad to be back here in person. But I do want to cover a couple things just in opening comments. We're going to try to move quickly. I think there's people probably out there in that room, right? And somebody from staff is helping them figure out where we're at on the agenda to make sure that they can get in and out. And then, John, just for everybody's sake up here, who all's actually in the room at the moment? What cases do we know?
I think we have old business and subdivision cases in the audience at this time.
Okay, so at this time we have old business and subdivision cases in the audience. Correct. Okay, so in just typical fashion, Planning Commission has received this packet in the mail a little over a week ago in advance of today's meeting and has had the opportunity to review it. And so in these cases, I'll ask if there's any opposition present. If there is opposition, or if there is individuals that are here, they're present, that want to speak, it's important that you raise your hand at that time so that I know you're here. So even if you're not in opposition and you just want to speak in regards to the case, make sure to put your hand up so that I know you're here. And in each case where there is opposition, or unless a Planning Commission member wants to, we'll hear the staff presentation. After we hear the staff presentation, the applicant will have the opportunity to come up to speak. And just for the sake of time, while staff is presenting, the applicant will be the first one to speak. So if you're the applicant, please go ahead and come up to the mic and be prepared so that as soon as staff is done, we can start hearing from the applicant. We'll have 7 minutes to hear from the applicant. Is that right? And then while the applicant is speaking, if you're here in opposition and you wish to speak, go ahead and get out of your chair and come up over and line up against the left side of the room. Keep some social distancing there so that I can see how many people want to speak. And then as soon as the applicant's done speaking, he or she will entertain any questions with Planning Commission. They'll take a seat. We'll hear from the opposition. From time to time with opposition, I have to interrupt because if there's a lot of people that want to speak, we only have a total of 9 minutes to hear from opposition. So keep your comments brief and to the point. And if you've heard the comments made already by somebody else who's here in opposition, then there's not necessarily any need for you to repeat those same comments. So do pay attention to what's being said in advance of your comments so that we can avoid the same things being said over and over and eating up that 9 minutes of time. Then once opposition's done, take your seat. We'll hear from the applicant again for a total of 3 minutes that they'll have to respond. Is that right? 2 minutes to respond to opposition. And after that, we'll ask any questions that we have of opposition. If we don't have any, I'll ask what the commission wants to do in regards to the case. We'll take action. Just as a point of reminder, all conversations that take place today are between the person at the podium here and the Planning Commission, not the person at the podium and staff or the person at the podium and the congregation. And or congregation, I'm sorry, this is not a worship service, but the audience. I hope not. But yes, please just make sure you keep your questions and comments directed at the Planning Commission. So it's been forever since I actually went through those opening comments. I've had these different opening comments over the last couple months, and so anyways, I think the only thing I might have missed is that when you come up to the mic, state your name and address for the record. And it's on. If you touch it, it will go off, and then we'll need to turn it back on. So with that being said, do we need affirmation of chairman and vice chairman? Mr. Bridger?
Yes, sir. Just per state law, I have to have basically a nomination of our chair and vice chair as officers. And as I understand it, I think Ethan was serves as chair and Todd Lehman is our vice chair in his stead. And so we just got to confirm those slate of officers and then vote. Just for every year we have to do that to maintain our current slate of officers for this board.
Make a motion.
We have a motion, and it has been seconded. to affirm the Ethan Collier for chairman, Todd Lehman for vice chairman. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
All right. We're going to jump into the agenda. The first item on the agenda is SD 2021-011, and this is inlet subdivision, phase 1, lots 1 through 20, 28 through 46, 110 through 113 at the 11900 block of Armstrong Road. And this plat, preliminary plat, has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is SD 2021-0020. This is in Council Fire lots 1 through 16, 500 block of Julian Road. And this preliminary plat has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Third agenda item, subdivision plat 2021-0021. This is Paradise Ridges, lots 99 through 173 Nature Trail, and this has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Fourth agenda item, case subdivision 2021-0022. This is Southside Square, lots 1 through 10, located at 125 East 20th Street. And this subdivision plat has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. First item under variances is item 5 on our agenda, and this is SD 2021-0016, and this is a variance request, section 38-44 for minimum lot area of city of Chattanooga regulations, and this is located at 3915 Meadow Lane. This has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there opposition present? Is the applicant present? Thank you. Brian?
Yes. And before I forget, when we get into zoning cases, I have in front of you a Google sheet it's like a summary of all the public comments we received for some of the zoning cases. But this is a request for a minimum lot area variance, which is section 3844.5 of the Chattanooga subdivision regulations regard to minimum lot size. Section 3832 of the zoning regulations provides the Planning Commission with the authority to grant variances on lot size as part of a proposed new subdivision. This applicant at 3915 Meadow Lane is proposing to divide one lot into 4 lots, with the 4th lot at the corner being less than 7,500 square feet. It's about 5,600 square feet in size, so they're asking for a variance on that. Basically, covers the same thing I just discussed, but there's 3 lots that meet the minimum. The 4th lot does not. It has 120 feet of road frontage. The lot size is around 5,700 square feet, so they're asking for a variance. Staff reviewed this. Approving the variance would be in conflict with intent and purpose of the subdivision regulations, as the new lot would not meet the minimum standards set by the zoning ordinance. The hardship in this case appears to be a self-imposed. It's created by this subdivision. Again, the minimum lot size is 7,500 square foot. They're showing 5,600 square foot as a lot size. And the variance would allow a lot that is 24% smaller than the base zoning for this R1 district. The area highlighted in the screen in red is the existing one lot that is proposed to be divided into 4 lots. And I just did a quick calculation of the lots around this property to show you what the lot sizes are. So everything abutting this property meets the minimum lot size. To the south, it's 7,500 square feet, then 8,900 square feet. Then across the street of Meadow Lane, you have a 10,000 square foot lot, a 15,000 square foot, and a 13,000 square foot lot. And immediately to the west of this site, there's a 16,000 square foot lot. So based on just the lot compatibility alone and the lack of a hardship on this property, staff recommended to deny the variance request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Are there any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? All right. Mr. Applicant, you can come on up. So state your name and address for the record, and then the reason for your request.
Yeah, hey, my name is Shazman Ali. Address is 772 Warlick Way, Chattanooga. And do I explain to you the kind of what I'm trying to do?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a fairly big lot. You know, I'm trying to split it into 4. 3 I could comfortably do. The 4th one, it has enough road frontage, and the kind of houses I'm trying to put on here would be roughly 20 by 40s or 20 by 50s. And for that corner, it would work well. And I just was trying to get 4 out of it. Of course, I can get 3, but was trying to get the 4th squeezed out of it as well if possible. I know that they recommended to deny it based on the facts, but that's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's roughly a 800 to 1,000 square foot house.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Payne.
Correct. 3 lots, he'd meet all standards. There would be no need for a variance.
Any other questions?
The 4th lot is the variance.
Correct. It's that one on the corner.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. And I asked earlier, but just to ask again, is there any opposition to this request? All right.
And we do send letters out within 300 feet of the property, so letters did go out advertising this variance request.
Thank you.
Motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Next item is SD 2021-0018, and this is also a variance request for 2 Section 3844 for a minimum lot frontage of City of Chattanooga regulations located at 7722 Stanford Gap Road. This case has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is item 7. It's 2021-0019, and this is also a variance request. And this is for lot frontage for flag lots, and it's located at 8012 McDonald Cemetery Road. In this case, has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? All right. And is the applicant present? Mr. Schultz?
Yes, this is case 2021-19, 8012 McDonald Cemetery Road. As you can see on your screen, McDonald Cemetery Road dead ends to this property. This property is currently 2 lots. The applicant is dividing, creating the lot in the middle. It's an irregular shaped lot. It's not really per se what you typically think of a flag lot, but we looked at it that way, that it is a smaller portion flagpole that opens up into a much larger area in the back, even though it doesn't really traditionally look like a typical flag. As part of that request, the flag lot has to be 25 feet wide at the public road. The applicant is requesting a variance in this. Lot 2 is a flag lot. Again, flag lots are required to have 25 feet of frontage. This proposed lot will have 17.5 feet of frontage. There is no other situation in this general area. You do have a flag lot just to the north that has small lot frontage as well. You're very limited in the width of McDonald Cemetery Road. And so staff looked at this, and since the road cannot be extended any further, there's no further development of this property, there's no other way to get another flag lot on this property, staff recommended to approve the request.
Thank you. Any questions for staff before we hear Councilman Ledford?
Brian, this has no other access?
No, that's the only access, public access is from McDonald Cemetery Road.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
My name's Tony Orr. I live at 8012 McDonald Cemetery Road. I reside on a 12-acre tract of land, and I'm asking for a variance for a 2-acre lot, which the McDonald Cemetery Road there, it's 60 foot wide. Now, we have it's 35 feet on our easement at this moment. I'm asking to divide that up into 17 and a half for my property, 17 and a half for the proposed lot.
Questions for the applicant?
I've got a question for staff.
Mr. Martin?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Mr. Schultz, so we're not dealing with issues about how close a house is to a boundary. We're not dealing with septic tanks. We're not dealing with any of those variances. It's just the driveway.
It's just the lot frontage, the lot width at a public road. Correct. We're not dealing with anything on septic tanks, setbacks, or anything like that. He's just asking, instead of having 25 feet of lot width at McDonald Cemetery Road, he's asking for 17 and a half feet.
Why? Is it possible that that road could be extended? Is that not a possibility?
Yeah, anything's possible. I guess it'd be a huge expense at his cost to develop that road for actually one lot. Maybe Todd could answer better than I can on the cost. That's be very costly to extend a road. Now, you could do a private easement, but you have to have 5 acres for that. He doesn't have 5 acres. So to extend a public road would be very costly for the one lot that he would get out of this. Plus, this is on septic. These lots cannot go much smaller than that based on septic tank rules.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, there were a couple folks here in opposition. I want to give them an opportunity to speak, and then you can come back up. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Sherry Pirtle, and I live at 8004 McDonald Cemetery Road. We actually purchased our house from Mr. Orr in 2017. The road is a small road, and there's a cemetery on the left-hand side before you get to our mailboxes. That's what he's talking about, and our driveways. So we don't share a driveway with Mr. Orr. What he wants to do is he told us that he wanted to build a house or a house to rent on that lot. And we are concerned about the septic tank issues and things like that. My husband and I, we were confused because when we bought the house in 2017, he told us that he liked the piece. It's a beautiful piece of property, and that he didn't want to have anything else back there. He wanted the 2 houses, and that was it. And he asked us, and we actually asked for some restrictions, but he denied those when we were purchasing the house. Like I said, we're concerned about the septic tank and the field lines being in that small area. That lot would back up right against our driveway, and we have a 3-car carport that would be right beside it. So that's our concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for the opposition?
So you're really just concerned about septic tank and house location issues, not
Well, that is-
not frontage issues.
Right, we didn't really want the other house. When you go to our property, you see our house, and when you go to his driveway, you see his house. We can't even really see their house, beside us. They have a beautiful barn in front of us that overlooks the cemetery.
Thank you.
And, we bought it to retire for, and we just didn't want a lot of houses back there. That's why we moved. We were at our house for 22 years, 2 miles from there. And so we, of course, purchased a larger house, and I do have a lot of family events there and stuff. And so we just didn't want a neighborhood. That's why we wanted the property.
Thank you.
So-
We're afraid he'll start breaking up the rest of the lot and everything.
Right, we weren't aware that he had the 12 acres, which is his business, but he didn't tell us that he was going to build. He just said, I'm building the house just for us, and we want just those 2 houses, and that's it. So he didn't really keep his word, so.
Thank you. You can come back up.
Maybe a purchase house, not a rental, but they are substantial, several hundred feet between this property and the adjacent property that they live on now. And I'd say it's probably at least 500 to 600 feet to their fill line area. It's well beyond, but there's no problem for any fill line areas. It's not at all.
You have to get Hamilton County Health Department approval for your septic tank
That's right.
before you can't do that until this is done. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Brown?
Brian, I think 12 acres was mentioned. Just for clarification, does that have anything to do with what we're looking at today? Or
I'll let him clarify. I believe it's this existing lot plus the lot he's proposing. I believe that's the 12 acres that he's referencing.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Anything else?
Second.
We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Before we move on, can we make sure that everybody in the room now should be for old business, case 26 and 32? Make sure everybody's...
What is that? But I will say, if your case has been heard and we've taken action on it, you're free to leave. So I see some of you sticking around. You don't necessarily need to stick around. You can leave as soon as we've taken action on the case that you're concerned with.
I believe everybody in the room should be for 26 and 32 under old business.
All right.
My question, if people have stayed, that they've already voted, they're taking seats perhaps from people that want to be in here for these ones that we're listening to.
Right.
That's my concern.
Yeah. Sir, were you here for something else? Yes, sir. Okay. Something later in the agenda or something immediately in the agenda?
He has another case on the agenda.
Is it
It
soon
is-
or is it later?
Let me find out. It is number 3 under new business, 59.
Okay. So either way, he needs to be in here in short order anyways.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else? Okay.
I'll just check outside. Everybody should be in here for these next 2 cases.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I will say, Mr. Chairman, case 2021-26, I don't know if the applicant's in the room. I did get a request. I believe he wishes to withdraw this case, is my understanding.
Who's the applicant for case 2021? Right here. 26. Okay. And is it actually the case that you wish to withdraw? No? I mean, if you want to withdraw, you can say it. If not, we'll just take our normal course of action. Okay, thank you. All right. First item under old business, which is item 1 under old business, is 2021-0026, and this is 7038 Ooltewah Georgetown Road, and this is an application to rezone from A1 Agricultural District to RT1 Residential Townhouse District. This case has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition present? Okay, you're here in opposition to that case. Okay.
And we did receive comments via email, which should be on your spreadsheet that I shared with you guys over the weekend.
This spreadsheet here?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Given what we just heard from the applicant, Mr. Is it Halliday? Is that right? You do realize that if it's withdrawn, that leaves you with one option. If it is denied, that leaves you with a time span for pursuing another option. Does that set well with you? A year. Okay. Just want to make sure you understood that. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep. Mr. Schultz.
Yeah. This is case 2021-26, a request to rezone from A1 to RT1. This is in the county for multifamily development. Approximate acres of this development is about 10 acres, 10.8 to be exact. Proposed number of units is 117. And that equals a density of 10.8 dwelling units per acre. Again, this is located in the county. It's 7038 Ooltewah Georgetown Road, and you can see on the screen the property highlighted in the yellow. Here's a view of the site, south of the site, along Ooltewah Georgetown Road. This is a view west of the site. The site's just to the right of the screen, looking along Ooltewah Georgetown Road at Harriet Lane. Now, this is a view north of the site along Ooltewah Georgetown Road. You can see it's pretty much all single-family detached dwellings along Ooltewah Georgetown Road. This is a view looking south of the site. The site's just on the left-hand side. This is south along Ooltewah Georgetown Road. This is another view south of the immediate single-family detached dwelling that abuts this property. This property also fronts along Siler Road, so also showing a view along Siler Road. This is a view looking south on Siler Road. The site's just to the right, and you can see the single-family detached dwelling that's located on this property. This is a view east of the site along Siler Road. You can again, once again see it's all single-family detached dwellings. This is another view east of Siler Road. Again, more single-family detached dwellings. Let's see. This is currently zoned A1. Everything around this property, for the most part, is A1. You do have a little further to the north along Mountain. What's the name of that road? Mountain Road. It goes up the mountain. That's R1. That's White Oak development. That's R1 with a PUD. Along Harriet Lane at I-75, you do have two little properties that are zoned R1, but generally everything around this is A1. We've had a lot of cases along Ooltewah Georgetown Road the past couple of months. In 2017, there was a request to rezone from A1 to C2 at Ooltewah Georgetown Road for a convenience store. That was actually at the intersection on the western side of I-75. That was denied by County Commission. And in 2019, at 59, we had a case on Snow Hill Road, which is a little further away from this property. That was a request to rezone from A1 and R1 to RTZ for cottage courts and single-family dwellings. That was denied by County Commission. And then most recently to the south of this site on Rado Road, which I don't believe County Commission has actually taken action on these cases yet, but that was a request to rezone from A1 to R3 with a PUD for multi-unit development. Staff recommended to deny, Planning Commission recommended to approve, but again, I don't think this has been acted on by the County Commission. And prior to this presentation, just further south, there was another request to rezone from A1 to R1 for a PUD as well. That was approved by staff and Planning Commission. This will go to the County Commission, I think, next month on that request. So there's been a lot of cases in this general area. This is a vacant piece of property. It does have a single-family detached dwelling on it. But if, again, looking at the aerial view and the images that we saw a few minutes ago, this is all a single-family detached area or neighborhood, if you will. There's no single-family attached in this general vicinity. This property is located in the White Oak Mountain Area 12 Plan, which was adopted in 2019. The plan recommendation for this particular piece of property was suburban residential place type, which is typically low to moderate density or an intensity of 3 to 5 dwelling units per acre. It's typically single-family detached housing. So the predominant use is single-family. It does allow for attached units and patio homes if the density is compatible. But again, the predominant use and character in this place type is single-family detached housing. Staff recommendation was to deny. The attached townhouses with a density of 10.8 dwelling units per acre and buildings with 8 attached units is not consistent with the plan recommendation. Townhouses, again, can be considered in the suburban place type if the density is less than what's proposed, which is typically 3 to 5 dwelling units per acre. The Area 12 Plan did identify other areas that are more appropriate for mixed residential place types where this use would be appropriate. Again, looking at the zoning map, there is no other RT1 zone property near this site. Approving the RT at this location would also set the precedent for future requests and shift the rural area into a more urban form. This is one area where staff felt strongly about. The development form would be changing. If you see in this area, it was primarily single-family detached. Introducing this development would be a new form in the area, which that form would be single-family attached. Also looking at just traffic. With 117 units, the project will typically generate an estimated 856 additional trips on the Ooltewah-Georgetown Road. So that would lead to an increase in density in the area. It would cause traffic capacity issues for Ooltewah-Georgetown Road. There are no additional roadway capacity, which is added for this road per the 2045 RTP. So based on all those staff concerns and comments, staff recommended to deny this request.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. If the applicant can come on up to the mic, that'd be great. Mr. Schultz, can you build more than one residential dwelling unit on a lot in RT1? Or is this proposed plan for ultimate subdivision?
He's doing, my understanding, ultimate subdivision. Here's the site plan that's proposed on this. These will be attached townhome units on individual lots. In the county, you can do 2 units on one lot as long as it's able to meet the subdivision requirements. Once you hit the 3rd lot, you have to subdivide.
But then this would not meet any of the subdivision regulations as it's currently presented.
Right.
So, I mean, irregardless of RT1, whether we voted up or down, you can't build what's proposed here in RT1. You did know that?
I realize there would be some issues that we'd have to work through, but just in all honesty too, like I mentioned last time, I'm new to the process, so I apologize kind of with that too. I appreciate a lot of you guys reaching out and being very helpful with that too. More than anything, I'm just looking to try and work and find something that's going to work on this property. Like I said, I'm willing to go back on density, so if you guys want to, put a cap on certain, you definitely can. But with what I have proposed here, there are some things we might have to work through once you get a little further on. But right now, I love to just kind of move forward and see what happens.
Mr. Chairman, I know it's like a broken record again. Just remember, we're not looking at this site plan or this project. We're looking at that zone, at this location. So,
sure.
Yeah, this site plan could change a million times, but
yeah. Like for me, and just in all honesty, is like, hey, I live in the area. I want this to be like I said, I want this to be an incredible development, but also something that fits the area as well. And so for me, but I do think there is some need for that density there. And I think, there's other developers you guys have talked to that have come in there and tried to do that because of the need, because of the demand there. And so for me, I realized, hey, this is probably not exactly what I'm going to build. I actually already own the property. And so, but I do think in the future there is something that there is a need in this community. And you guys see it. Anybody that's gone out that way or driven down that road sees that. And so I'm really asking, really for the zoning of, hey, what that would look like in order to be able to accomplish that. Something to continue to work with the community. I know there's a lot of people that are really against this, and I know there's a lot of people that are really for this that are afraid to say anything, right? And so I only know that just because I live there. I'm in the neighborhoods and houses literally all around right there continually. And so that's my ask is really just for the zoning.
aspect of it. I humbly ask. I trust your guys' perspective and opinion. You guys have been doing this a lot longer than I have, for sure, so I'm grateful for you, but that's kind of the ask.
Okay.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Schultz, just to clarify what it was that you said earlier, if this case were to be denied, as staff has recommended, would the applicant be able to come back with any rezoning request for a year or no rezoning request for a year?
It's no rezoning request on this particular piece of property. It's that year kicks in at county commission, not PC. So whenever the county commission would act on that, it's 12 months from that date.
Gotcha.
And I'm okay with that, because for me, I'm a long-term person in this community that long-term I want to see something great there. And so I'm going to continue, you might see me for several years or whatever that looks like, but that's kind of where I am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Not with you, just as a process, because what you just said, if we vote this down, can he withdraw it before it goes to
No.
planning? Once we act on it, then but the calendar doesn't start until county commission, is that?
Well, yeah, we get what happens. Once it leaves our office, we really have no more control over those agendas. It's up to the county commission and the commissioner for that district to whether to accept the withdrawal or not.
But we can't. Once we act, it's too late to withdraw. Is my question? I'm just asking.
You can.
Once
It's
we
more
act,
difficult.
then
At this
the years-
forum. At this forum.
Okay. It's more difficult once it leaves here.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, Laura?
And just another clarification to staff. If withdrawal would give the applicant more time to work with staff to look at options, as he just described, that he wants to look at options for developing his property. So if he withdrew, that would give him more time to have pre-construction meetings, et cetera, with staff.
Correct. And there's multiple ways to get, there's R1, R1 PUD, multiple tools.
Correct.
And they get you what you need to look at.
And it's funny because I've gotten from different people. I've gotten from different people from county commission to here to different ideas, both splitting both ways of which way to do it. And that's why originally you had the email with the withdrawal, and then had someone come up to me and tell me the exact opposite. So for someone trying to learn, it's great, and I think that's why we have this, is so everybody, you can get different opinions and different perspectives on everything. And I've definitely got different opinions and different perspectives on everything, and working through that. So. And that's what brought me to this point. And so, like I said, time for me is not necessarily an issue. I think something long term. I want something great there, and whatever that takes in order to do that, that's what we're going to do. So.
Mr. Holliday, I think I speak for all of us when I say we appreciate your willingness to put it before the Planning Commission and
Yes, sir.
vet it out. I can't speak for what action Planning Commission is about to take, but I've been sitting here for 8 years, and I'd say they're about to vote to deny this. They're going to listen to opposition, and then they're going to deny it. That's why I think everybody here hears your comments and your desire to do something on this property, and would prefer you to withdraw this. Now, if you say you don't want to withdraw it, I'm going to call opposition up here, and I have a feeling there's going to be a motion on the table before we get very far into their comments.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and I understand that. I mean, for me, it's difficult because you have two different bodies, and you might be hearing different things from two different bodies, right? And so, and so that's why.
Fair enough.
You get pulled both ways. I don't know if that articulates it well enough of where I am, but
that's great. You want to vet it out at County Commission? That's good for us, I think. All right, we'll hear from the applicant.
Opposition.
No, I'm sorry, the opposition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Good afternoon. My name's Jay Underwood. I live at 4840 Waverly Court in Ooltewah. I'm here with my mother and her neighbor, who live basically 2 doors down from this property, one on Ooltewah at Georgetown Road. My mother lives on Siler Road. She's lived there for 40 years. What has been proposed is a totally alien type of development. It is not in keeping with the area at all. And I don't know, maybe it's normal, maybe it's not. It's strange to me to say, well, I'm not going to build this. I'm not going to build the plan that I've submitted, but please change it anyway. And have no project on the table that we can even talk intelligently about. It doesn't seem ideal to me. I would ask you to continue with the staff report recommendation and deny this.
We do have a motion to deny. We'll need to hear from the applicant. We just have a motion, and it now has been properly seconded. We'll hear from the applicant. Knowing that you have a motion and it has been seconded, and you heard my previous comments in regards to the likeliness of this being denied, did anybody else in opposition want to speak? Okay, I just want to make sure we don't cut you off. Do you want to say anything else? Okay, thank you. Any discussion? I think it's worth there being a little bit of discussion, even though I think we're probably unanimous in that this needs to be denied. This is, I think staff's comments are spot on. And I think you're seeing that Planning Commission agrees with staff's comments, that there may be a need for this. You certainly think that there is. All because there's a need does not mean that this is the right location for this type of development as it's currently proposed. And, since you do already own the property and it's likely that you're going to continue to try to figure out how to develop it, I would really encourage you to take a good hard look at the Area 12 plan, because the Area 12 plan was adopted by the Planning Commission and County Commission within the last probably 12 months.
2019 is the most recent plan.
It's a very new plan. And our county paid the staff to put that plan together and work within the community to put it together. And what you're hearing today is that the Planning Commission is in support of that. And so take a good hard look at that Area 12 plan, where your property falls within that boundary and how, to proceed. But I'll leave it at that. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Yeah, Todd.
Yeah, just for staff to clarify, because I know you can't before City Council, but I believe we've had cases withdrawn prior to County Commission. Is that correct?
That is correct. It just
do it before it gets on the agenda.
Before it gets on the agenda. Once it gets advertised and gets on the agenda, it's pretty difficult to get withdrawn.
Gotcha.
And they always call us, but we have no control. Once it leaves our office, we don't control the county agenda.
So you'll pull it from the agenda if there's a request to withdraw prior to County Commission?
No, they call the county commission office and they give the county commission chairman, and then he has to agree to either, if it's been advertised, it has to go in front of the full county commission. If it hasn't been advertised, subject to the agreement of the district chairman, the commissioner whose project this is in, if he agrees to withdraw it, it's withdrawn. It's multi-layered.
So if it hits the agenda for County Commission, the County Commission can't allow a withdrawal after that?
No, because it's been advertised.
Okay.
You can withdraw it, but it has to go in front of the full body. For vote.
But you could still, the County Commission could rule to allow a withdrawal even though it's on the agenda?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, so if this winds up on the agenda, and even though it's not my district and I'm not the chairman, if I made a motion to withdraw it, that could be voted on by the commission and it could be withdrawn.
Correct. You just couldn't call staff and say staff withdraw it. We couldn't.
Wouldn't the
take that
applicant
action.
have to?
Yeah, right.
So you can't make a
couldn't do it.
motion to withdraw something when the applicant doesn't want to.
No, right, absolutely. I'm just saying that.
Otherwise, I think that would have just
district does the commissioner's retiring.
Gotcha.
Well, the way this cookie's going to crumble may be a little bit different than that situation would normally be.
Okay. Any other discussion? Moving on in the agenda to item 2 under old business. It's 2021-0032, and this is the Champions Club LLC located at 7502 Snow Hill Road, and this is for residential plan unit development abandonment. In this case, along with the one immediately after that, 2021-0033, which is for special permit for residential plan unit development, both have a staff recommendation to approve. Do we have any opposition present? Okay.
And we did receive opposition and support emails.
All right. And is the applicant present? All right. Are we waiting on people to come in?
I think this is it. This should be all that's here.
Okay.
I think they're coming in for the next cases.
Gotcha. All right. Mr. Schultz, we'll let you run us back through these, and then we'll hear first from the applicant and then the opposition.
Right. Okay, these cases were, I think, originally in front of the Planning Commission in March, and they were deferred.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate, when we have cases like this together, we'll hear from the applicant on both cases at one time, and then we'll hear from the opposition
All right.
on both cases at one time, and then we'll take action on them independent.
Okay, I'm going to go out of order a little bit. I'm going to go with case 2021-033. This is a request for a special exception permit for a PUD. And actually 32 is to abandon the old PUD. But we'll talk about the first one, which is a new PUD, or revised PUD, if you will. This is the Hampton Creek Planned Unit Development that was adopted back in 1998. And it was actually in two sections. It was adopted in 1998 by 124 and 194. But the area we're talking about is highlighted in the red on the screen. This is one subdivision, but they were approved in two separate stages. Overall, it has 125.26 acres in size. Number of units is 157. They're proposing 11 new lots in this new phase. That's the trigger. Adding any more lots is considered a major change, which is a new application. And that's why this is in front of the Planning Commission. The developer, which owns the golf course, has applied to abandon the PUD and put a new PUD. Basically, the boundary stays the same, just adding 11 new lots. That equals a density of 1.25 dwelling units per acre. This is the site. It's located at 7620 Snow Hill Road. It's currently zoned R1 with a special exceptions permit for a PUD. That PUD was approved in 1998 by Resolution 998-40B by the County Commission. And again, we're just talking about the area highlighted in the red on the screen. In 2003,
is utilized quite a bit for overflow parking. So the plan is to now, instead of having sort of a park as you will, to now have a dedicated parking area, which is directly located behind these homes, which is what you see located here on the plan. So there has been quite a bit of communication as it relates between Mr. Stern and those members of the neighborhood. I think staff has alluded to the fact that there are quite a number of emails and also a online form. It relates to the support that was granted. And that was before we went from 11 to 10 and with these changes. So I can only think that the amount of support that is there within the community would only have increased based upon these changes that have been made. So based on that, we would ask for approval as it relates to the proposed plan. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Price, Mr. Farmer?
Your client, does he have any declarant rights that you know of that was passed on through his purchase of the golf course?
So I'm not aware of any declarant rights that would have been passed on, but what I would say is by the fact that he purchased the community lot area, whatever rights that he had would be the same that the previous owner had. That would be my guess, but I'm not a practicing attorney.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Price, this site plan that's before us now is different than the one we saw 60 days ago?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the changes have been made, one reduction of unit and an additional parking facility built in?
I would state that if it were to receive...
I'm trying to figure out what the major give was.
I think that the major change that I see here is the fact that there is now, these homes will be rear loaded. That would be a condition subject to the Planning Commission's approval. And then landscaping has been added as well, which would be a type C landscaping as shown, and then a reduction from 11 to 10. Those are the major changes. That we then identified some of the other plans as it relates to going in around the clubhouse area.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I was actually talking here. I admit, I don't know if the applicant addressed it or not, but we still have the issue, I think, with the 200 lots and one access point. Has that been, did you address that, Mike?
So I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that up. So we do recognize the fact that Hampton Creek as a whole has more than 200 lots today. There's 211 homes, if I'm not mistaken, overall. Current fire code requires anything more than 200 lots to have a secondary entrance. So if Planning Commission does pass this, then I would also see a fourth condition, which would be that there would have to be a secondary access added to this development, subject to the staff and to the RPA and to the fire marshal's approval. So we don't have that identified at this point. There are negotiations that are taking place with regards to several property owners that adjoin Hampton Creek, but it would have to be at some point that is subject to staff approval and the fire marshal in order to gain these lots.
We've got a question from Councilman Ledford and Mr. Martin.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Price, so what I'm hearing you say is that if we denied this, there's just going to be the one access for 211 homes. But if this is approved, one of the conditions that you would be willing to would be to have two. And that would be something that would be beneficial to the neighborhood.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. So I remember the fire marshal playing a big role in the conversation last time. I still feel like the fire marshal's playing a big role in this as well, and identifying that second entrance seems to be pretty important to me, because that will then affect other houses or other residents. And I think that question for me, Mike, is still lingering out there that needs to be answered, whether or not where it's going to be. And I think it makes a complete picture of what this PUD looks like. So I have some concerns because I don't think that puzzle has all the pieces put in yet. And I would prefer seeing some more time spent in answering and getting answers from the fire marshal, because I think that makes a better and more complete picture. Otherwise, we're dealing with a variable that is unknown, and I think that's kind of not fair to some folks. That's just my opinion.
I understand, and certainly we recognize the fact that the fire marshal would have to approve whatever access point that is. I guess, Brian, if you'll pull up the overall PUD boundary. So if you look at the PUD boundary, basically the only access points that can be generated here would be occurring in the southeast quadrant, which is where the maintenance building area is now. So in other words, this would be an emergency access. This would not be one that would be basically utilized for people simply to drive between this development and some development to the south. This would be for emergency vehicles only. So given that the fact that it would be located in that southeast quadrant is where we would envision, it would not be located up to any adjacent houses, nor would I see that envisioning creating any sort of traffic or noise or any other type of issues that would otherwise be undesirable. So I recognize the fact that it's not identified with point specific, but we sort of have a area specific, and given where that location is, because everything else from there back up to Snow Hill Road, you have no ability to create an access. All of the lots in through there are side by side stacked in through there so that there is no ability to construct another road. There is an area there that is a community lot off of the cul-de-sac that's closest to Snow Hill Road, but you really cannot put in an access point given what the access requirements are from the fire marshal. So I agree it's a little nebulous, but we can be specific with regards to that would be a requirement if the approval is granted.
And the reason I kind of bring that up is you obviously know where I live in a PUD, and I take that PUD pretty serious. I invested a lot of money to build my home there, and across the street there could be an access to an entirely different neighborhood. And if someone came in and were to kind of or not give me definition on where, I mean, that would determine a lot for me as a homeowner. And if you did put it there, I mean, I think I would have the right to be concerned and voice my opinion. I just want to make sure that folks have the right to voice their opinion on whether or not there will be new access to through traffic in front of their house, given they bought into a PUD. Those are just my concerns today as we see this come forward again.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. We'll hear from the applicant. I'm sorry. I keep getting these backwards. You're not the applicant this time.
Yeah, not
Opposition.
This time. Good afternoon. My name is John Anderson. I'm with the law firm of Grant, Comalick, and Harrison. I'm here today on behalf of Steve Ray, Joan and David Rose, Alan, Cindy, and I, Edley. I want to talk for a couple of minutes. I want Mr. Ray to be able to talk as well. I agree with Brian Schultz. It is not fair to say that 62 acres is available to all PUD residents. It's only available to people who pay to belong to the golf course. And so to say that property is available is really not a fair characterization. Secondly, Commissioner Ledford talked about one of the linchpins to this, and that is the fire entrance, the second access to this area. To say it's nebulous is at best disingenuous. It is a critical part of this process that should be known, identified, and set before this body and before the property owners before a PUD is abandoned and before a new PUD is approved. That's a significant, substantial issue. In addition to the fact that this is a 26-year-old PUD, 146 people have bought their houses in reliance on this, and we're now moving to make a change of a significant stature without all of the information. Trust me, we'll have it resolved by the time we get to County Commission. I agree with Commissioner Farmer's comments about whether there are in fact declarable rights available, but it's also a significant issue. On that, I'd respectfully request that at a minimum this deed be deferred for 60 or 90 days, or at a maximum, in the best case, this commission would vote to disapprove, recommend to deny both case 32 and 33. And I appreciate your time.
Were there any questions for opposition? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Joan Rose. I live at 7336 Clouds Creek Drive. And if you'll pull up the layout, my house is on the left there, not the one with the pool, but the one up from the bottom. So as you can see, I'm directly affected by all of this. My husband and I purchased our home 18 years ago. At the time, there were 25 homes in our neighborhood. We now have 211. So we watched the neighborhood grow and develop and mature. We learned of Mr. Stern's proposal by way of Facebook. And you can imagine our surprise reading that one night, sitting on the sofa. We reached out to Mr. Stern, asked for a meeting, the 5 homeowners there along with me, and he offered us the opportunity to purchase those lots for $1 million. So we could buy them. That would prevent him from developing them. You know, he confirmed to us in that conversation this was his plan all along when he purchased the golf course a year and a half ago, that he was going to develop the lots. You know, and I find it frightening that a new property owner, the golf course, who is not a member of the Homeowners Association, who does not financially support the neighborhood's gate and streets, we're gated, so we maintain it all, you know, has the ability to abandon our PUD, incorporate homes into it, and form a new PUD. You know, I looked up the definition of a PUD. It is a planned and built as a unit, thus fixing the type and location of uses and buildings over the entire project. The area for development is planned all at once, so land uses complement each other. I respectfully ask that you deny the request.
Thank you, ma'am. Does anybody else wish to speak?
Good afternoon, and thank you for hearing me. My name is Mark Edward Oshola. I live at 8362 Gentle Mist Circle. In fact, if you look on that chart, the graph, you can see my house is the house is the proposed homes. The very last one on the curve is right there. That's where I live. And that's why I strongly oppose this because any of you, if you've driven behind residences or structures where you can't see oncoming traffic, where you come to a quick stop sign on a main road, it's a recipe for disaster. And I think any of you would see that the exit way, the back alleyway, is going to dump out right on a curve on a highly trafficked road with folks walking their dogs, kids on golf carts, golf course equipment, and folks just walking and trying to enjoy the scenery. I'm strongly opposed to this because of that fact that this is a major safety concern where that alley dumps off. So I'm strongly opposing this, and I hope you will as well.
Thank you. Sir, just as a reminder, there's only 1 minute remaining.
It won't take long. My name is Steve Ray. I'm also a resident of the Hampton Creek neighborhood. I have served on the board twice, once as secretary, once as president. I've lived there for 16 years. Ladies and gentlemen, not one time was I ever called by somebody in our neighborhood asking that our PUD be changed. On February the 3rd, we were all faced with that all of a sudden. Somebody that doesn't live in our neighborhood informed us via Facebook that our PUD was wanting our PUD to be changed. Never happened before. I just want to say that all my friends and our attorney have made a good point. I won't bore you with any more points. I ask respectfully that you turn this ridiculous request down and let us go back to living in our neighborhood that we have lived in for 16 years, some of us 20 years, without the fear of somebody coming in and changing our neighborhood. I don't think anybody up here would want your neighborhood changed. This is just a gateway for, I think, Mr. Stern to further cannibalize his golf course into housing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Price.
Thank you. So let me first say this is not a cannibalization. This is a complementary use. If you look at the plan, this complements exactly what's out there today. Rear loaded, same size lots, price point will be anything above probably what the rest of those currently are selling for today. It's not a traffic issue. I designed the original Hampton Creek. I know this road well. I know that the curvature in that road. I know where I come out showing the proposed alley, it's not a safety concern. So given the fact that it is complementary, the area currently is used for overflow parking. We're providing parking when it's all said and done. This is very much in keeping with what Hampton Creek represents and is, and will not diminish the property values nor take away from their ability to enjoy where they live today. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Price? Mr. Martin.
I've got a question for Mr. Price, and I'd also like this gentleman that just spoke to, when you talked about how that area was used as overflow parking, how many cars would you say were in that as an overflow?
At any given point during?
Yeah, just any given point.
50 to 60 is what I'm.
Would you agree with that number? No. What would you say it was? No, I'm talking about right now as a golf course, and people are using that as an overflow and they're parking there. He says it could be 50 or 60. Do you think that's the right number on a Saturday, a Sunday? So here's my question, Mr. Chairman. If you have the alley there, doesn't that help with the flow of traffic if they're coming out on that south end especially? Is that something that could be conditioned where that alley is you come in one way and you exit the other way? I'm just asking. Does that not help with, instead of having 60 or 90 cars, that you're talking about 20 or 30 cars that are coming at various times?
Yes, at the end of the day, it's far safer to have 2 points of access coming out on the General Miss Circle than to have 10 driveways. That's the reason that, and after we got comments back from some of those in the neighborhood, we recognized that fact, and that's why we rear-loaded it.
I understand that. Would this alley be a one-way alley where you're coming in from that curve and exiting out across from whatever that road is? Or is it both ways? The alley, people come in both ways?
It's currently shown at about an 18-foot width, which is sufficient for two-way traffic coming through there. It's tight, but that's in keeping with what's out there in some of the other alleys in the area. So whether it's conditioned to one-way or remains two-way, I don't know that we have a strong opinion one way or the other as far as it relates to that particular issue.
And then one other question, back on the issue of the fire entrance. Brian, if you could bring that up down there at the bottom, that area down there. If you brought that in by the golf course, a maintenance shed, I'm assuming that's what that is, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you built some type of road there that would make it accessible to ambulances, fire, et cetera, how do you keep other people from coming down that road and using that as an entrance into it?
So what they have now are what are called knock boxes, and essentially those are receivers that receive the signals sent out from emergency vehicles and cause them to open. So the gates only open for emergency vehicles. Now, in the event that you had an accident or for some reason the entrance was no longer accessible on the current Hampton Creek, then that gate can be manually opened, and then at that point traffic flow in and out through there. So it's not for people just simply wanting to drive into Hampton Creek and do a sightseeing tour from another development, or for people to be able to come out through there except under those emergency conditions. That's what we would propose.
And are there neighborhoods in Hamilton County that have this box you're talking about right now, and I'm just unaware of it?
Here recently, that has been a requirement from the county fire marshal and the different fire marshals that in their jurisdiction. So yes, sir. Matter of fact, we're doing one on Hampton or on Seven Lakes right now, adding a second entrance there on that particular development. So this is the new standard coming forth in the county.
And only emergency personnel can access that?
If that is what is so desired by the community. Otherwise, it could be left as an open access, but we recognize the fact that this is a gated community and want to stay in that same mindset, is to keep it gated and not to allow people just simply to come in and out unmetered, if you will.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer?
I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
I've thought a lot about this case, and I'm really worried that we would, if we accept this, that we would set, in my mind, what would be a dangerous precedent. You guys have known me for a long time. You know that I'm for responsible growth and that type of thing, responsible development. But the other thing that I am, as you know, is pro property rights, and I'm really struggling with how an applicant who is not the developer and doesn't have declarant rights and is not the HOA. If it was the HOA, I might look at it differently. And the HOA, the PUD, the subregs require an HOA, and so if it was an HOA, I might look at it differently. But here's an individual that comes in and buys maybe the largest asset in the community. That's great, but what gives that person the right to act as the developer and change a PUD? And it's relevant to be able to accept an application from someone who is not the developer or not the HOA. And then the second thing is, I think it's a really bad precedent for what we're setting for private property rights for these homeowners. And at the appropriate time, I'd be happy to make a motion.
Mr. Farmer, thank you for those comments. I do have a question for you. But before I ask that, as Mr. Farmer's made these comments and staff's had the opportunity to hear them, it's prompted some questions that I've got. Can any other property owner inside this PUD request a change to the PUD boundary and the limits of the PUD? Your mic's off.
you as the property, you have to at least have property owner interest. And what we did, we wrestled with the same question. That's why we required notification of all the owners in the neighborhood. The way we processed it was, well, anybody who owns a piece of property could apply to rezone their property, which also has a similar potential impact on adjoining neighbors. There's no limitation on rezoning your property. So we said, but there's also the concern about people who bought this PUD, understanding it was going to be the way it was designed. So the way we managed that was we required a notification sent to all property owners in that PUD to make sure they're aware of that request, to try to balance, make sure there's good notice, because technically anybody could apply to rezone their property.
PUD boundary, and they wanted to make a change. Could they make a change through this same process?
I think as long as you have ownership in the PUD, and I think, again, so you have to have ownership inside. I would say if you're outside, I don't think you could. You have to own property in it. And again, I would say the other thing that probably needs to happen with the PUD is if we're going to limit the ability for future amendments, that probably be written into the language of the PUD itself in terms of the zoning text side of it. So without that clear guidance one or the other, basically we're treating this like a zoning case. And so we're just doing the extra due diligence on notice because we realize the same thing that Mr. Farmer mentioned, the concerns about other residents who bought in understanding it's going to be this. So to be sure to give everybody an opportunity to know what was being proposed, we required that notification be sent to all property owners.
Okay. Mr. Lehman.
Yeah, and let me sort of say the same thing, and I guess request even looking at it, because I do think the language we need, when I think of PUDs, and it actually brings up the point relative to some of the other code requirements or permit requirements. A planned unit development should go through a certain level of engineering. I think Councilman Ledford made the point about the 10 additional and the fire marshal. I'll just say now our PUD rules don't disallow somebody from getting a PUD. Now our codes will allow us from giving permits and signing plats, and that's typically how it's done. You can get a PUD on septic before you get any soil scientist on the site to actually even determine. So the way I read our PUD rules is sort of a maximum. And so what's coming up now is it's 255 or whatever is 211, and they're asking for 10 more, which is a maximum. Has nothing to do with a permit or a code. That's after the fact. Although I would probably argue, and I think we have before, that in also talking about who can apply for a PUD, and I think that's a great conversation because I know we've added PUDs and expanded PUDs years after the fact with different applicants and different developers. I think we did one just within the last month or so on out in the county. So I think our PUD rules, and I think it's appropriate for this commission to request it, and maybe this is something staff can do, but it goes to the point that we need to clarify how we apply, what can happen with it, because I think currently everything that's been at least requested is in the PUD rules. It's the owner of the property, it's the applicant, it's adding to the maximum, which is changing the density, even though they won't get these 10 lots if they don't deal with the fire code. Just like if we do PUDs with septic, you don't get all the lots you sold on a PUD plan. So I would offer both. I think we need to make sure that PUD language regulations in the county are specify a lot of the things that we're talking about. I also think that a planned unit development needs to have quite a bit more engineering and design work on the front end. But those are my comments relative to our current PUDs. Thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, this question for you, just to clarify something Commissioner Farmer said earlier about moving it forward. Regardless of outcome of this body, it will move to County Commission for a final.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, no matter what happens today in terms of the recommendation, it still goes forward.
Okay, just want to make sure we clarify that for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Farmer, I got a question for you. This guy bought the golf course, right? What do you think, in your opinion, if he wants to tear down the clubhouse and not rebuild it?
I think that's probably in his purview. I mean, it's his. I mean, if he's a private individual that owns the golf course, quite frankly, if he wants to turn it into a garden, I think he could probably do all of those things. But
so in your mind, his rights extend as far as the PUD boundary, but where the PUD boundary is the limitation of his
that's my
rights.
Yes, that's my opinion.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Martin?
the staff's recommendation is to approve, correct? And I'll make that motion.
We do have a motion to approve. And I want to be clear, that's in regards to the case 33, which would be the new PUD. That motion has been properly seconded. Any discussion? Good call. All in favor? I'm going to do a roll call. I'm going to put you on the spot. Mr. Payne? Mr. Palmer? Maya, what's your last name? Mara. I'm sorry. What is it? Sullivan. I'm sorry. Miss Sullivan. Mr. Coker. Councilman Ledford. Lehman. Martin. Farmer. Verone. Maybe. Motion does not carry. Mr.
Move to
Farmer,
deny.
we have a motion to deny. Need a second. We do have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? All right, by roll call. Mr. Payne? Palmer? Sullivan? Yes. Coker? Ledford? Yes. Farmer? Brown? Maybe. Motion carries. And that's in regard to case 33.
Mr. Sheriff, and also just for communicating to the county commission for the thoughts on the reason for denying the request would be, how would you want us to convey to commission the thoughts on that?
I think I've made my
Make
thoughts.
them listen to the tape.
Okay.
I think I've made my thoughts
There's
pretty
been
clear.
plenty of discussion.
Let's make sure for the record. Let's make sure.
Mr. Martin can bring them up to speed, can't you?
I will say I think this is a really good opportunity to put some definition in a major modification to a PUD and who can and can't do that, because I think it's clear that, it's cloudy at best.
I would support that effort.
All right. Case 33 was denied. Case 32.
32 is to abandon that PUD.
Yeah, I mean, we're not.
I don't think the applicant wishes to abandon that.
I would say we can't take action on that now.
We need some type of action to deny.
We still need to take action on it, even
Yeah.
though we didn't approve a new PUD?
Yep.
Okay.
For the record.
We have a motion to deny, and that has been properly seconded. I'm not going to take a roll call vote on this because we really do have to deny this, I think, at this point. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting on the room to clear out, I apologize. We forgot to introduce our newest Planning Commission member, Mara Sullivan, who's replaced, Mr. Mayor Kelly has replaced Blythe Bailey with Mara. So,
welcome.
I thought John was going to do that. We forgot.
Well, thank you all very much. I do have a planning background. I was planning director for a school district in Shelby County, and then head of planning and development for Memphis and Shelby County. And before I got into the larger administrative sides of city governments, I was the deputy chief operating officer for the city of Memphis, and then chief operating officer for the city of Chattanooga. So I do have lots of years of planning experience, and I'm excited to be here with you all.
Glad to have you.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something real quick?
Sure.
I'm actually very excited to be able to sit somewhere alongside Maura. Usually we're on the opposite side of the dais, and she has always been incredibly not only professional, but she knows her stuff, and extremely pleasant to work with, and I welcome you to the Planning Commission, and it's really great to be able to sit next to you and on this dais, and I appreciate your experience and what you'll bring to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Have we got a room full of new people? Did we bring in any new people? Okay, it's just the same old people. We just got rid of the
I think
old
they just
ones.
came in. They just came in early, excited to hear about the cases.
Okay. Yeah.
We're on the new business.
We got to be wrapped up, and I don't think that's going to happen. All right, first item under new business. Case 2021-0057. This is located at 13264 Jones Gap Road, and this is a special permit for a single-wide manufactured home. This case has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is item 2, case 2021-0058, and this is located at 5048 Irvin Road, and this is an application to rezone from R1 residential zone to A1 urban agricultural zone, and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is the applicant present?
We'll check outside. I do know we received a couple of emails in opposition. I think they were elderly people. I'm not sure if they're going to be here today, but I'll check.
Is there any opposition in the room? Okay, so there's no opposition and there's no applicant? Is that right?
I'll make a motion.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to make a motion, but ahead of that, I want to make a few comments. I have been in contact with Councilman Hester. There are some concerns from area residents that I'm sure we're going to hear from again. But given the staff recommendation and given the conditions, I'm going to go ahead and move to approve with conditions.
We have a motion to approve with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is case 2021-0059, and this is located at 2500 and 2502 Bailey Avenue. It's an application to rezone from R2 residential zone to RTZ residential townhouse zero lot line zone, and has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present?
Can I ask the applicant if he's okay with the condition?
Yeah. So we have one condition on here that's parking to the side or rear only and accessed from the existing alley. Are you familiar with that condition? Do you have any questions or concerns with it?
Second.
We have a motion, and it has been properly seconded to approve with conditions. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is item 4 under new business. It's case 2021-0061, and this is located at 11233 Blair Road. And it's an application to rezone from R2A Rural Residential District and A1 Agriculture District to R3 Multifamily Residential District, and has a staff recommendation to deny. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition? Okay. Is there any opposition present? Okay. Mr. Schultz.
Sure.
We'll hear from the staff first, and then you'll have the opportunity to speak.
This is case 2021-61. Again, this is a request to rezone. This property has a split zoning designation, R2A and A1. The request is to go to R3. for existing basement apartments. The size of this property is a little over an acre. It's 1.03 acres in size. Number of units is 3, and that equals a density of 2.91 dwelling units per acre. It's located in Appleton at 11233 Blair Road. Here's the aerial view of the site. You can see it has an existing single-family dwelling and a detached garage, and within that existing single-family dwelling, there are basement apartments. Again, it's currently zoned R2A and A1. To the north, south, and east and west is all A1. Further to the east, you do have some R5, which is single-wide manufacturing homes and single-family detached dwellings. And then to the southwest at the corner of Parkinson Road and Blair Road, there's a small little section that's zoned R5. But you can see in this zoning map, there is no R3 in this general vicinity. It's all rural, low-density zoning. Again, this property was rezoned to R2A and A1 in 1984 for the purpose of having a single-family dwelling with an efficiency apartment. Again, there's several properties on Blair Road that are zoned R5 for single-wide manufactured homes, but again, there's no R3 in this general vicinity. Everything around this property is single-family detached on large lot developments. This is in the White Oak Mountain Area Plan, which was adopted in 2019. The place type recommendation, that land use plan, was countryside residential. It typically consists of single-family residence on lots of 1 acre or larger in size. Residential development is recommended to be a low intensity, up to 2 dwelling units per acre. And the primary uses in that place type are single-family detached, ADUs, and bed and breakfast. Doesn't mention apartments. The R3 zone would allow for a higher intensity residential uses that are more appropriate in a mixed residential place type. The current R2A district allows for 2-family dwellings by special permit through the Board of Zoning Appeals. The R2A district is more compatible with a countryside residential place type, recommended in the Area 12 plan. Here's just a bigger, closer view of the Area 12 plan. Staff recommendation is to deny the request. Adjacent uses include single-family residential, including mobile homes and agriculture uses. Aside from the existing non-conforming multifamily uses on this property, there are no other multifamily uses in the area. There is no other property in the area zoned R3, so approving R3 would set the precedent. And this request would also be a deviation from the most recently adopted Area 12 plan. So staff recommends to deny the request based on those reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I asked earlier just to confirm there's no opposition. Applicant, come on up.
Thank you guys for hearing me. I ask for just a moment of patience from you because I am a homeowner. I'm not a contractor. I've never done this before. I don't know anything about zoning until now. I prepared a brief statement here, and I ask that you please just bear with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Please bear with me. In January 2019, my wife Shelley and I bought our first home at 11233 Blair Road in Appleton. We wanted a house that was in the country, not a townhome or an apartment complex. The house sits on 1.03 acres of land with multiple fruit and chestnut trees. It has 2 structures on the property, a house and a detached shop garage, which are separated by about 35 feet. The garage is about 1,700 square feet and big enough for a nice shop, as well as parking for 2 cars. It has power that is buried underground running from the house. What is important to understand is that the house is rather odd or non-traditional in its construction. This is where the crux of this rezoning matter is. The house is built into a hill and has 2 levels, basement level and upstairs, as well as 4 exterior doors that make it very ambiguous as to what the main door actually is. Let's talk about the basement first. The basement is divided in 2 parts separated by a solid block wall. Actually, it's not block, it's framing, sorry. On one side is a basement apartment which has 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room, and 1 external door facing the front of the house. This apartment is roughly 900 square feet. The second part of the basement is smaller, has a half bathroom in it, 1 bedroom, and another bigger room which could be considered a den or living room with 1 external door facing the side of the house. It is important to note that this section of the basement also has an internal staircase to go upstairs. Now let's move upstairs. This is the main living area and is where my wife and I reside. It has 3 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a kitchen, living room, and dining rooms. It has an external brick staircase going to the 2nd-story front door, and it also has a back door exiting into the backyard, in addition to the internal staircase going downstairs. So if you're keeping track, in totality, the house has 6 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, and 4 exterior doors, in addition to the 6 parking spaces, 2 in the garage, 4 outside on asphalt. When we bought the house, one of the selling points was that the larger side of the basement, the 2-bedroom apartment, was already rented and providing $525 of rent per month. The then current tenant was subsidized through the Chattanooga Housing Authority and was an older lady that had lived there several years. Unfortunately, when we bought the house, it only had 1 shared mailbox down at the road, and none of the ambiguous exterior doors were labeled. The need to change this became quite apparent when one morning, just a few months after buying the house around 4 a.m., the tenant called 911 because she thought she was having a stroke. I was awakened by a notification on my Nest camera that showed a vehicle backing up to my boat. I couldn't see that it was a fire department vehicle because it's emergency lights. After rushing out to what I thought was an attempt to steal my boat, I met EMS workers. They told me they did not know which door to go to and had almost broken down my back door in an attempt to provide medical care. I'm very glad they did not, as someone breaking into my house during the night generally wouldn't end very well. To differentiate zones of the home for emergency services and to ensure that the U.S. mail would be delivered to the correct parties, we initiated proper unit number assignment by calling the USPS, 911 call center, and Hamilton County GIS. At no point was zoning mentioned, and we were encouraged to ensure each area of the house and exterior door had their own address. It made sense to go ahead and get the smaller basement area its own address, as we had been considering finishing the half bathroom downstairs, adding a tiny kitchenette, and letting it be a place for my mother-in-law to stay with us as she is getting elderly. So the committee met and assigned us 3 addresses: 11233 Blair Road, upstairs; 11233 Apartment 101 for the future mother-in-law suite with access to upstairs internally; 11233 Apartment 103 for the large downstairs apartment. A side note is that the Section 8 tenant left and my brother and his wife live downstairs in the 2-bedroom apartment. Enter the zoning issue. I asked an electrician to upgrade the house to 400 amp service instead of 200 amps. The house has 2 meters fed by an overhead line. The 2-bedroom downstairs apartment is on 1 meter with 100 amp service, and the other side of the basement, the entire upstairs and the 1,700 square foot garage is fed off the other meter with 200 amp service. The 200 amp panel is overcrowded with very little expansion room. I had big plans for a welder, 80-gallon air compressor, plasma cutter, CNC table, and all the fun toys in my shop that I was trying to make. And that required a large amount of power. The electrician put in a request for a permit to complete this work, and 2 to 3 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail telling us that we were in violation of zoning, and that if we did not immediately apply to rezone, legal action would be pursued. This was rather startling to me as a first-time homeowner. Up until this point, I really knew very little about rezoning. I didn't even know what zone the house was in, to be quite frankly honest. I immediately called the planning agency and explained my complex situation and was told I still needed to apply to rezone and was still in violation. I told them that nothing had changed since we bought the house except for adding the proper number of mailboxes, and was told I still had to apply to be rezoned and was still in violation. So here I am, trying to rezone. Not because I want to add on a structure, not because I wanted to rezone in order to redevelop the land, but simply because I was told I had to rezone to R3. Interestingly, the report sent to me by Trina McElvain states that the house is in fact properly zoned for the current occupied apartment. Therefore, aside from having an extra address for 911 purposes, it appears we are not actually in violation of anything in terms of actual occupancy. I have already discussed eventually finishing the smaller section of the basement into a mother-in-law suite with a full bath and a kitchen sink with the Chattanooga Groundwater Protection Agency, and they gave approval in an email that was sent to the Regional Planning Agency. In my opinion, my house is anything but ordinary in layout. Rezoning to R3 would not set a precedent in the local area because my house shouldn't be considered a precedent. It should be considered an exception to the norm. There are not many other 3,257 square foot houses with 6 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, 4 entrances to the exterior, and 6 parking spaces available in the area. Thank you for your time. I will answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Just one question. Who was that last letter you got from that actually said you weren't in violation?
Trina McElvain, I have called
I mean, but where's it from? I mean,
It's RPA. Trina's in our office.
Yeah.
Trina's in our office. Now, we
I
don't
have
enforce the
called
zoning code.
unending
That's-
times to try and get this situated, and quite frankly, I'm like, I don't know what to say.
Okay, well, I was just
If it-
wondering, I didn't.
If it is used as a single-family dwelling, she's correct. That is allowed in the zone. I think the issue is the apartments.
No, I understand
Yeah.
the issue
That's what
completely.
clarify.
I just wanted to know who that letter was from.
But I'm not wanting to try and build anything new. I'm literally just trying to add a kitchen sink and a shower downstairs. Does that make sense?
It does.
It does.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
So, first of all, Brian, is there any way he can be accommodated through Hamilton County BOZA?
No, that'd be like a use variances. We couldn't do that. And I would say staff really struggled with this. We understand the use, what he's trying to do. The only tool to get there is at R3 zoning. And if you look at the plan and the area, there's no R3 in the area.
So, I would say the R3 is in contradiction to Area 12.
Correct.
So we've got that established, and it would set a precedent on paper going forward. That's a big problem. We all understand that. I'm trying to help this guy out because I'm like you. One day I want my mother-in-law with me because
How many units
she's
are
the
you getting?
best.
Let me ask a question.
So I'm trying to find this gentleman a solution, John, that, I don't know, maybe Mr. Lehman can pile in on this maybe after the meeting with him. But, I mean, I hear you. You've got
I mean,
an
as
unusual
it's
situation.
used, like it's going to be family. Like my mother-in-law eventually
I'm a
has
huge,
talked to me about it, and
huge
then my
component.
brother's living
Yeah,
downstairs.
I'm with you, brother. I'm a huge component of multi-generational, and I'm hoping we can find a way.
How many units
help you.
that are you having in the existing structure? How many units total
How many do I want?
that you need for the dwelling? Okay.
2 downstairs, 1 upstairs.
I got a question. If it's his family, why is it considered a unit? Why isn't that just?
Because
I mean,
it's
I
gonna
don't
have a
consider my
separate
kids.
mailbox
I put them in
sir,
their bedroom and they're not in
Just
a
let
unit.
let's just let this happen,
I'm so
unless
sorry.
there's a question for you.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
My question is, being his family, why are we breaking this down into unit? I don't understand why this is not his house and he can have whoever he wants to live there.
He's adding, my understanding, adding the
the
mailboxes and addresses in the kitchen.
It's building because I understand it's because when you add the kitchen and bath,
You're telling me if I have a house, I'm limited how many kitchens I can put in my home?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
How many kitchens can I put in
One.
my personal house?
1.
Then that's broken constantly.
I feel you, brother. I feel you.
And just remember, when this property was rezoned to R2A, this property was given the ability to have 1 single-family dwelling and 1 additional dwelling, so 2. The one other one's, I think, causing the trigger. And I think when they reached out to building codes, that's when building codes said, hey, wait a second, you're not zoned for that use.
It's the third unit.
It's the 3rd unit, it's the trigger. With the mailbox and the kitchen.
Sure.
And I tell you, staff struggled with this one.
So if there was a motion made, and if Planning Commission passed the motion, and if staff were given directive to come back with suitable conditions to ensure that R3 was not a really practical precedent to be used moving forward, could staff actually assemble those conditions?
Well, I'm thinking just quickly, would it be just the number of units? 3 units?
Well,
I
it'd
don't
be
know what
number
else
of
you would.
units, size of units,
think the other thing
building.
you-
I mean, there might be all sorts of conditions that you would want
Right.
to have, such that if it were precedent setting, it wouldn't be.
I think the other thing I'd document is that the basis, because it's already zoned R2A as opposed to something that wasn't already zoned for some multi-unit. So I'm saying you're differentiating this property from other properties. The fact that it's already got R2A zoning, that's another limiting factor. You see what I'm saying as far as precedent goes?
Yeah, and just as a reminder, we can defer without the applicant's permission to defer, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what I was just saying was we could defer this for 30 days and, give the applicant an opportunity to come up with some suitable conditions to put in front of us that might prevent it from becoming precedent setting. Because I think we all have that concern. Do you have a question?
Can I just say the limit would be 3 apartments? I mean, is that appropriate to say that? I mean, I could say that right now. I don't have any other plans to add anything else on.
Well, I just think that we very much value staff's input. There probably are other things that need to be given consideration to, like the number of parking spots and that your house doesn't someday get torn down by some, because zoning changes go with the property, not with the property owner. So while I think Planning Commission likes you, you may not be the owner of the property in 10 years, and somebody else could tear it down and build a triplex, and that wouldn't be in keeping with the form of the neighborhood. So I just think it might make sense to give staff the opportunity to study it.
I'll make that motion, Chairman, for a deferral for 30 days, but I see Mr. Lehman's light, so I definitely want to hear
No,
from him.
I was going to motion it or second it. I mean, my only point is I'm sure the 3 addresses or maybe an additional meter or something like that probably caused the non-compliance issue. But no, I would second that motion. We can maybe find out both from a building code, building inspection, zoning compliance, and deal with a lot of that over the next 30 days. So I second.
We want to help, Mr. Bowen.
Thank you.
I promise you.
So we do have a motion. It has been seconded to defer for 30 days, specifically to give staff the opportunity to review it, knowing the intent of Planning Commission is to approve the zoning request and would like to see conditions that, protect other neighbors and ensure that it isn't easily precedent setting. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
So do I just...
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I did have, not pertinent to the case, but I wanted the commission to know, because this might come up again, sitting on the Historic Commission, we're allowing people to build mother-in-law suites or apartments over garages, and the only limiting factor is the kitchen. If the building inspector sees a kitchen, he will red flag it. If there's not a kitchen, it's approved. So that is, to Mr. Commissioner Payne's point, that is how that is being enforced in the city of Chattanooga, is the kitchen.
The kitchen.
I don't necessarily agree with it, but I wanted to be clear to the commission members that that is what's going on, and that is probably a large point of order in this case.
Councilman Lippert.
Yeah, let me add in on that, because Thomas is right. That is not by zone or city code. That is actually in effect by a memo issued by LDO. And I think that we are already, Maura might actually be able to shed some light on this if you can. If you can't, that's okay. But I think we are already addressing that, Commissioner Palmer, because some great concern has come with the development or adding in that second kitchen. And as we move forward to conversations about ADUs even, I think that is already starting to be addressed by the new administration and trying to change that. If I'm correct, Maura? Yeah.
Yes, sir. You are correct.
Very good. I'm trying to stay on top of this. I love this job. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant, you can reach out to us at RPA next 30 days. I think you probably got Emily's contact, or Emily Wood. Yeah, just contact her, Emily, and we'll get in touch.
All right. My understanding is that both cases 5 and 6, 2021, 0062 and 0063, the applicant wishes to defer these cases for 60 days. Is the applicant present? Is that actually the case? What's the will of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to defer 60 days. On top of that, for the record, we did conduct a community meeting 2 Fridays ago, and several questions arose, including maybe the ownership of the pool, who has the rights over that. So there's a lot of questions that the developer needs an opportunity to work with the community further on, and this dialogue needs to continue. So I do move for that for 60 days.
Second.
We have a motion to defer for 60 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, is that for both cases, or are we going to do one at a time?
Well, just for 62, technically.
Okay.
I guess then we'll take action on 63. Any other discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And on 2021-0063.
Move to defer 60 days.
We have a motion to defer for 60 days, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Smedley sent me an email as well. She told me to read this into the record, that she does support the deferral of 60 days for this case.
Next case on the agenda is 2021-0064. This is located at 4905 Highway 58, and it's an application to rezone from RT1 residential townhome zone to R3 residential zone. And this case has a staff recommendation to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Staff aware, any opposition?
No, we do not receive any opposition to this case.
Okay, is the applicant present? All right, and you've received this one condition, which is building height limited to 2.5 stories or 35 feet. Are you aware of that? Do you have any questions or concerns about that condition? We have a motion to approve with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I think on the next case, number 8, 2021-69, I do believe the applicant wishes to defer this request.
On case 2021-0069, is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Applicant for 2021-0069 is asking to defer for, did you say 1 month?
Yes.
30 days.
Second.
We have a motion to defer for 30 days. Any discussion? Oh, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, case 2021-0070 is located at 15425 Dayton Pike and is an application to rezone from R2A Rural Residential District and A1 Agricultural District to R3 Multifamily Residential District. This case has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? I'm assuming even if they wouldn't, I mean, they would be present, right? They're not going to be outside. We do have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? Hey, Alan, is this the same client that we voted one of your cases down not long ago, right? You see how easy this is? This is great. Good work with your client. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I think Mr. Payne's giving me 1 minute to wrap up this meeting, so we're moving at breakneck speed. Case 2021-0071 is located at 7418 Mahan Gap Road and the 9000 block of Highway 58. And this is an application to rezone from A1 Agricultural District and C2 Local Business Commercial District to C3 General Business Commercial District. This case has a staff recommendation to deny the applicant's request and approve other. Is there any opposition present? I keep asking this. We would know? Okay, they would be in here?
I just checked. There's nobody coming in, and we did not receive any opposition via email.
Okay. And is the applicant present? And are you familiar with the condition that it be C2 Local Business Commercial District permitted uses and indoor climate controlled storage uses only?
Yes, and we wanted to address that. My name's Wayne McCoy. I'm here representing Miller McCoy, and the owner's also here, Carl Sodergren.
Okay.
And the property that is currently zoned C2 that we were asking to be zoned to C3, we just wanted to be sure that the RV and boat storage is allowed on that rezoning. There was some question.
Was that intentionally omitted by staff?
No. John's throwing me out there pretty quick on that, wasn't he? No.
So
we assumed when we reviewed this that the RV and outdoor would be just an accessory use to the indoor storage. But to be clear, it probably makes more sense to go ahead and add RV storage as a use and boats. That way,
we would, if that were the case, we would approve C2 Local Business Commercial District uses and indoor climate controlled storage and boat and RV storage uses only?
Correct.
So that modification would happen to the condition?
To the condition, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may add one clarification, there's a difference between the staff recommendation and what the applicant's request in terms of the area. So just know that we are recommending just the C2 area be rezoned to C3. The applicant would also like the A1 part of the lot rezoned to C3. So just be aware of that difference between the staff rec and the
It's on the
applicant's
screen. If you see on the screen, everything in red is the current C2. Staff is recommending to keep that, rezone that to C3, keep this A1 to stop it from going further down Mayhan Gap.
Okay.
Yes, the portion that's currently zoned A1, of course, we would like for it to be zoned C, with the same conditions. We're fine with that, but, we're showing the type B buffer, and the owner has contacted the adjacent property owners, and there was no opposition. They were concerned about drainage, and they were assured that we would meet all the requirements as far as detention and runoff, that the post-development would be less than or equal to pre-development. So there was no adjacent opposition, and the owner is agreeable. That buffer, I think there's some existing trees, and he wants to keep all the native vegetation that he can, but and also the portion that's already zoned C2, we're looking at, there's power lines that separate the two properties, and we're looking at maybe trying to do some detention in that area, and it would spill over onto the portion that's currently zoned A1. So, and all this is, he's wanting to start out with the RV and boat storage on the portion on the front, and as it grows, he wants to move on to the portion in the back and make that I guess, boat and RV storage as the market allows.
I got a question.
Thank you. Mr. Payne.
The language we just talked about, we said it would be appropriate to allow boat and RV storage, but outdoor boat and RV storage is what we're talking, right? We're not saying he has to build a building and put the boat, so it's outdoor storage.
Outdoor.
Okay.
And just for the record, that's the whole site. He can do that in the whole site.
That's
not the staff recommendation. The staff recommendation is to deny the rezoning.
Correct.
His
But then,
application
I guess
is for
with
the
the
entire
conversation that we've just had. Thank you.
And the boat and RV storage, it would have canopies over it, and I think he's looking at doing solar panels on top of the canopies, and but that's the plan, is to have outdoor storage under canopies.
Mr. Lehman.
So the applicant asked for C3 on the whole site.
Yeah, let me try to clarify.
And-
If you see on the map here.
Yeah, and y'all recommended C2 on just the red portion.
Recommend C3 with C2 uses on the red portion, subject to that condition. But the applicant wishes to carry the whole site, C3, with the same conditions, but just add also RV and boats are allowed as storage on the outside.
Let me ask the question again. So staff was recommending to leave a portion of it A1, or was all of it going to go C?
Keep A1.
Okay.
Keep it A1.
So the staff was recommending that the outside of the red box that I'm looking at to the right stay A1.
Stay one. The intent behind that, or purpose,
Okay.
was to keep the commercial from further creeping down Mayhan Gap.
What's the buffer between a C2 or C3 and an A1?
I think it's 20 foot.
Okay.
Councilman Ledford.
So, Brian, let me get this. I think I heard you say you're recommending C3 with C2 uses.
Yes. There are a little difference between C2 and C3 in the county.
I understand.
We've done this in the past. Some of it is to do with the C3 uses, opens up industrial uses, industrial type uses. So that's why we're doing the C2 uses. Also, you can do with the condition of indoor storage and RVs and outdoor storage only.
Okay. I pray for our code enforcement. But anyways, so we'll need to amend this condition to add outdoor boat and RV storage.
Yeah. And do you want to make that apply to the entire site as the applicant requested? Right now, the staff rec is only a portion of it.
The applicant's okay with the staff recommendation, correct?
For the front portion that's already C2, we would just ask for your consideration on the rear portion that is now A1. The closest houses in the rear there, I don't know whether you've got something that shows the houses, but with the buffer that would be put in place, the houses will be 95 feet, 116 feet, and then on the right side there of the plan, that one would be the closest. It would be 50 feet. And there would be a natural buffer there, and then we would enhance it however we needed to make sure that we had a good buffer.
Mr. Lehman.
That's all I've got. Thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, so it does, the A1 does, I was trying to make sure that so the backside does front Mahan Gap, the front side career. Okay,
Yeah.
I was unclear on that other one.
Yeah, here's the aerial view, and if you can see this little,
Yep.
this home here, that's the A1 portion that we were trying to preserve and keep that, stopping that commercial from going further down Mahan Gap as a stopping point, was these power lines.
Of course, okay.
Again, that's just a recommendation. That's
Mr. Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do understand where the staff was coming from on their breaking it up. I do think with the lack of opposition here in the plan that they have in buffer requirements, they're already part of code, that in this case it is appropriate to rezone the whole property. I make a motion. Make sure I get all these right. So rezoning the entire parcel, both parcels, C3 with the C2 uses, but making sure that that it also allows for outdoor RV and boat storage.
We have a motion with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, this room is about empty. Is that because there's nobody here? I'm just not sure what to do with the fact.
I think most of the cases, the rest of them probably don't have any opposition till you get down to some of the mandatory referrals. I'll check,
right.
See where we are.
Mr. Payne, brace yourself. All right. Item 12, case 2021-0073 is located at 900 Birmingham Highway, and it's an application to rezone from M1 manufacturing zone to M2 light industrial zone, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present?
I think we skipped over agenda number 11.
Oh, that's just because that was Alan's, and I wanted to push it back to the end. We do have a motion to approve. Was that seconded? And it was properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Backing up to item 11, case 2021-0072 is located at 8001 Volkswagen Drive, and it's an application to lift conditions and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded.
Mr.
Any
Chair,
discussion?
I just want to recognize, I think Commissioner Palmer's going to for the record. He recused himself on one of those votes, just for the record.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman.
Any discussion on 11?
11, I just want to say that it's one condition, it's number 5, just for the record. Correct.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is mandatory referral 2021-0074. And this is located at the 6100 block of Hickson Pike and is for sewer easement abandonment. And it has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is mandatory referral 2021-0075, and this is located at 300 block of Patton Chapel, and it's a sewer easement abandonment as well, and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman and staff, on the next two cases, 76 and 77, those staff recommendations are reversed. 76 should be defer, and then 77, which is case 16, item number 16, that should be deny applicant's request, approve other.
All right.
So the staff recs are reversed on those.
Well, I need to step down and turn the meeting over to our vice chair.
76 and 77 on your agenda, the staff recommendations are reversed.
Okay, so I'll read those. So case 15 or item 15, case 2021-0076. It's the 1500 to 1800 blocks of South Watkins Street, 1506 South Lowry Street, 2500 block of East 16th, East 17th, 2305 East 19th Street, 2461 East 18th Street. It's to lift and amend conditions. The staff recommendation is to defer 60 days. Is that correct?
Well, yes, but I think we need to discuss this one, even though it has to defer. That's my understanding. We need to discuss because there's some out of this. There may be some proposed amendments to the C3 that we need to discuss.
Is the applicant present? Okay. Okay. Well, won't you take us through it then, Brian, and then we'll hear.
Okay. This is case 2021-76. I won't read all those addresses again, but this is near Highland Park. You see on the screen, this was rezoned last May, this time last May to C3 with several conditions on the property. Get through the zoning here. But again, this whole area was rezoned from various zones. They had like M1, M2, R2, and some to C3 with conditions. Here's all the conditions that it had on it. All the conditions were tied to specific site plan areas on the site plan that was submitted with the application. Some were prohibiting uses, dealing with setbacks, height requirements, access to sites and buildings, off-street parking, and then street frontage. All those were dealing with that same particular piece of property. A lot of it came from UGC and C3 conditions, so it was a blend of conditions. The C3 has been sort of our catch-all development where you don't have some new zoning tools that would make these developments work. So we follow back to C3 or UGC. In this case, it was C3. So in the meantime, now fast forward to this year, the applicant wishes to add some conditions and also amend conditions. So the ones we'll go through, I won't go through all these, but the first couple ones are proposed conditions to add. These are requested to be added by the applicant, dealing with setbacks. The white is where the language is the same, and in the red is where it's a little different. So the applicant is proposing to add a side yard of not less than 10 feet is required where a non-residential use adjoins a residential zone or use, and 5 feet where a residential use adjoins a residential zone with an existing single-family detached residence. That's the condition proposed by the applicant. Well, if you go down the bottom, we still have the C3 in place. The C3 has zoning standards. Well, those standards state the following. A side yard of not less than 10 feet shall be provided where a non-residential use adjoins the residential zones. Those are very similar to what the applicant's proposing. Here's where it gets a little different. A side yard of not less than 10 feet shall be provided only where a permitted residential use adjoins an R1 zone or other residential zone developed with single-family residential detached residence. The difference there is the 5 feet and 10 foot. The current standard in the C3 standard is 10 foot. The applicant is proposing to add a condition that reduces that to 5 feet. Well, we can't act on that. That's a variance request and not a condition. We can't, through conditions, reduce the standards. So that's sort of the next item. Is another one dealing with setbacks. That proposed condition requested to be added by the applicant was dealing with reducing the side setback for non-residential uses where it abuts a residential zone from 10 foot to 10 foot, sorry. But the current C3 says 25 feet. Again, that's another condition we cannot act upon. The options are, number one, go to Board of Appeals or create amendments to the current zone to change those. Here's another one dealing with landscape provisions. The current landscape provisions, which is in the orange on the screen, requires a type B or a 20-foot landscape buffer anywhere commercial or non-residential uses abut residential uses. The applicant's proposing to reduce that to 10 foot. Again, that's another standard we cannot recommend or even Planning Commission can put a condition on to reduce those standards. So that continues throughout some of the conditions. Some of the conditions we can support lifting because they did make sense and it was not regulated by a zone. So I won't go through all these. There was a lot of them to deal with. So at the end of the day, what staff is recommending to do is defer the case. Staff is considering a modification to the C3 zone that would provide the option for customized development standards for large master plan projects, if you will. It's almost like we call it a PUD, specialty PUD. The older C3 standards would remain in place for existing C3 zone properties. This would at least provide a zoning process and a tool for larger redevelopment projects that have no other viable zone options. It's almost like what we did with the Bend, where the Bend came back, amended and provided their own standards. The C3 zone was originally developed as a zone for the central business district, but has shifted in its purpose and use to more customized planned unit development zone. There have been modifications to the C3 zone over the years, and its use has changed. So one of John Bridger's last items before he leaves is to work on some type of C3 modification if the Planning Commission chooses to go this direction. Again, right now, based on some of the applicants' proposed conditions, we just simply can't act on those because those are really variance routes through BOZA. So the options are twofold. One, go to BOZA and seek variances, or requesting an amendment to the C3. If you have any more questions on the C3, I'll let John answer those. But that's sort of where we are in this case, is to defer till that
and the
happens.
60 days will give you time to develop those amendments. I mean, that's the intent, correct?
I'll let John answer that.
Okay.
Actually, 30 days. We want to, because I think the difference here is we've had this, again, I think these conditions aren't not new. This problem's not new. And so I have already started on working on a potential amendment. I'm waiting for some direction from PC before we move any further along. But I think what we essentially would be doing is somebody would be applying for basically a set of standards that would go with the zone for a particular site, very like a PUD.
Okay, fair enough. Councilman Ledford.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the reason we're having difficulty with this is because C3 isn't carrying the water for us, so to speak, in the bucket. So do you think you can get it done? Can we get it done in 30 days?
I've already created a draft.
You're already on it. So, John, I already knew the answer to that.
Well,
so
it's building on a bigger picture, our zones in general in the city.
Sure, I know we're working through that.
We're working through that
with Camrose, and I look forward to seeing the report. Hopefully that's coming really soon. But when we talk about master planning, we talk about vision, we talk about our zoning code as it stands, we're not keeping up. And we saw that, and I said the same thing when the Bend came through. So I like the idea that you're willing to create flexibility. Is that what I'm hearing? Within C3?
And there'll be a process, because we know that, as you know, we've got to have a good process and transparency in terms of how you establish those standards.
Sure.
And so I think because you're creating those standards, we need to be more thoughtful in how we review those. And so I've spelled out in that how that gets established through, which, again, this would come before this body for review and city council. So just like any other zoning change, everybody will get their eyes on it, and so we get a chance to make sure we're doing the right thing before it's final.
Well, I think we learned something through the Bend process, too.
Yeah.
So I think that we're carrying that forward, so that's great. So my question is a procedural one. Do you need a motion to direct you to create this out of C3 or to modify or amend it separately, or does item 0076 create that? Does that deferral automatically create that process?
I'll let John answer, but I think we were I was looking for direction, separate resolution or separate action from Planning Commission directing staff to draft.
I think it'd be good as part of your motion.
So that's not on our agenda, but would you like me to, I was going to ask you, do you want me to add that in?
Ask staff to do that.
Okay, I can do that inside of a motion.
Well, do you want to, let's hear, let me make sure, because I think, let me ask the applicant, and let's deal, you want to deal with this first? I'm assuming, and Mr. Black, if you want to add any information, I'm assuming that the request is to defer to 60 days because the intent is for us to give you a motion and direction for a C3 amendment that you're going to bring back to this body in 30 days, and we're either going to approve it or amend it, and then this case would come back up in 60 days. The next
Well, I think we're shooting for 30.
Okay, so we can do them both at the same time, and the issue is we can't do this here, these requests. They would have to be Board of Zoning without an amendment.
Yeah, and
Okay.
without an amendment, a lot of these conditions we can't act on. It'd be Board of Appeals. There's some of them we can, so that's why we wanted to make these come together next
I got
month.
you. There's not any opposition. I'm assuming you're good with a 30-day deferral?
We are.
Okay.
We are.
Maybe back for the record, we did receive one letter from somebody in opposition, but it's more about the next case. I think he thinks his property was part of this request, and it's not. So I want to make it clear for the record, his property is not in this request.
Okay.
Well, the next case.
If the commission's willing to entertain a deferral, let's do that, and then let's take up Councilman Ledford's. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'll move to defer 30 days with direction to RPA to modify and amend C3.
Does that work?
If I make one other comment for the record,
John.
I think it's important to know that clearly this is a tool we not only need for this site, but for other sites, the Buster Brown site. We have a lot of other industrial sites that would need this tool. So just to be clear, I think this is something we need for urban redevelopment in the city as a whole.
Agreed.
So we've got a motion to defer this case and to also give direction to the staff to create a C3 amendment or tool. It was properly seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Sorry. Motion carries. Thank you.
We're clear?
Okay. Okay, so now the second case on
Thanks,
here.
Mr. Black, you were great.
And I just stay
Thanks,
right, stay right there in case we need you again. Case item 16, 2021-0077. A whole list of addresses on East 17th, East 19th, East 18th. And it's to rezone from M1 manufacturing zone, M2 light industrial zone, C2 convenience commercial zone, and R2 residential zone to C3 central business zone with conditions. And this staff recommendation is to deny the applicant's request and approve a different one.
Right. And I'll go through, there's I think 5 sections here. I'll go through each one of these at a time because I think the applicant is probably opposed to one of our recommendations.
Okay. Well, then, Mr. Schultz, if you'll go take us through the case, and then we'll hear from the applicant.
Okay. This is case 2021-77. This is adjacent to the properties we just talked about, and it's called the Milltown development. These are properties adjacent to that development. I have these broken down by areas. Area 1 is highlighted on your screen. It's along South Watkins Street. You see it just on the left-hand side. And the opposition letter we received is this property here, just the back of this industrial piece of property. We notify adjacent property owners of any zoning request. He got the letter because he's adjacent, and he had his attorney write a letter basically stating, to be clear, his property is not part of the request, and it's not. So let's make that for the record. This area 1 is currently zoned R2 and C2, and you can see on the screen here. This particular piece of property is located in the historic River to Ridge area plan, which is adopted in 2020. And the plan recommendation or place type for this property is urban residential. The urban residential is a traditional neighborhood pattern that includes a wide range of uses, both single family and small scale apartments. The primary uses are single family detached and 2 to 4 units per lot. The C3 zone allows for a mix of residential uses that can be compatible with the adopted plan. However, the C3 zone also allows non-residential uses and a higher intensity of residential uses that is not compatible with the urban residential place type. The RTZ, RT1, or R3MD zone is more compatible with this place type in terms of residential uses. So staff recommendation on this area 1 is that the C3 would change the historic pattern of this residential block by inserting a commercial zone into a residential area. So staff recommends to deny C3 and recommend approval of RTZ at this location. So we'll stop before we move on to other recommendations, if you will, and let the applicant respond to area 1.
Mr. Brown, are you?
I am.
Are you good with staff recommendation on area 1, or?
No, we actually would like C3 with conditions. Those parcels front South Watkins Street and are adjacent to property. You'll notice to the north, there are 3 parcels that were zoned C3 just south of the East 16th right-of-way, and we would like to continue that form. Our intent is to develop these properties as part of an HPR development with a continuous form. And so we would like all of these properties to be considered in light of that continuous form. To the south of 4 and 5, you'll find M1 property, which you received that letter indicating that was not a part of our zoning request. And even the lot to the east, or excuse me, to the west of number 4 is vacant R2. There is one home adjacent to number 3. And so just from the standpoint of the overall development, our intent, again, is a continuous design form on Watkins Street, and to access those homes which would actually front Watkins Street with rear access. So we would actually install a private alley that would serve as a buffer as well between the residences on 17th Street and the development on Watkins Street.
Okay, I think I understand. So staff is recommending RTZ, zero lot line, and I think the applicant is requesting C3 with conditions for that portion. So
Yes. May I add one more?
Sure, go ahead.
Piece? In our previous zoning, C3 zoning last year, Article 1B in our ordinance actually identified 2 parcels that were residential only. And I think one way to mitigate concern about commercial development adjacent to the 17th Street residences is to also include 2, 3, 4, and 5 in such an article, such that they would be for residential development only.
And when the applicant's saying 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's the highlighted, that's the parcel numbers right here. That's 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's what he's referencing.
Okay. So we probably should have done the ones we all agreed on first, because this is the one we don't, right?
Well,
Right,
if you want me to, because he's mentioned the C3 conditions, I think staff's in agreement.
Well, let me see if there's any questions, because there may be some questions both for, and direct them to either staff or the applicant, and then we'll try to work our way through this. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian, with the modifications to C3 that you're going to bring back to us next month, does this have any impact on the situation we find ourselves in right now?
You want to answer?
Yeah, I would envision that when we get the whole package, that these conditions will have to be modified. I think the issue we have, and an applicant can speak to this, is a permitting issue. They need to get this rezoned so they can move through the permitting process.
Okay.
And so that's why I think the applicant is desiring to move these cases forward, even though we know there's going to be some condition modifications down the road.
Time sensitive then.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
If you want me to, Mr. Chairman, I can go on through the other cases. That way we can get to the C3 conditions, because the other areas, we are in agreement. It's rezoned to C3 with conditions.
Okay, so it's just this first
It's just
area?
this first one area.
Okay, well, why don't we go and stay there, Mr. Black? Why don't you go through the rest of them, and then we may have some additional questions and/or a motion at that point. Go ahead, Brian.
This is area, what I call Area 2 on East 17th Street. It's highlighted on the screen in the yellow. It's like a little field goal, if you will. Here it is again on the zoning. It's R2, adjacent to the Milltown, which is Zone C3. So it's the area highlighted in the yellow on the screen. The request here is to go to C3 with conditions. This is in the Historic River to Ridge Area Plan, which was adopted in 2020. Place type recommendation on this particular piece of property is mixed residential, which provides a wide range of housing options, including moderate to high intensity housing options, multi-story apartments and condos, with an average density of 15 dwelling units per acre. Primary uses include 2 to 6 unit living attached, apartments, townhomes, etc. So staff recommends to approve C3 with conditions on Area 2. Area 3 is just south of the site we just talked about, and it's highlighted on the screen in yellow. This particular piece of property is zoned M1 with no conditions. As you might know, our M1 is wide open, permits a wide range of uses, has no conditions on that property. So the request on this area is to go C3 with conditions. This is in the Historic River to Ridge Area Plan, which also recommends mixed residential on this particular piece of property, which is the same uses I just discussed a few minutes ago on multi-unit apartments, high intensity to moderate intensity development. So staff recommendation on this Area 3 is to approve C3 with conditions. Area 4 is further south of this site, is highlighted just in the yellow. It's hard to see, but that little blue building roof, this area right here. It has a split zoning designation, which is C2 and M2, again with no conditions. These are wide open zones with no conditions. Adjacent zones are M3 to the north, M1 to the north, to the south is M1, and to the east is C2. This is also an historic River to Ridge area plan, which is again adopted in 2020. This place type designation is industrial hybrid, which includes a mixture of light manufacturing, assembly, and contractor businesses with multifamily residential and commercial uses. Staff recommendation is to approve C3 at this location with conditions. And finally, Area 5 is just to the west of the area we just talked about. It's one parcel that's highlighted here. Adjacent uses are apartments and single-family detached and vacant lots. It's currently zoned R2. To the north is R3. To the west and south is C2. And then to the east is R2 zoning. This is in the, again, historic River to Ridge Area 3 plan. The place type recommendation is mixed residential, which primary uses include 2 to 6 unit living attached, apartments, townhomes, and multifamily dwellings up to 12 units per lot. And on this one, staff recommends to approve C3 with conditions. Those C3 conditions are the following. Areas 7, 8, 9, and 10, which reference the map to the right. We have prohibited uses, auto-oriented uses, alternative financial institutions, liquor stores, adult-oriented establishments, as defined in Section 38568, 18, subsection 3, and kennels are prohibited on those parcels. Areas 6, 11, 12, and 13 and 14. As shown on the attached map, residential uses only. All other uses shall be prohibited. And I believe this is where the applicant is saying at this section here, we also add 2, 3, 4, and 5 to residential uses only. We also talk about setbacks. These are the same conditions that we're carrying over from Milltown. If you want me to, I can read all these, but if you want to save the essence of time, just to go through them pretty quickly.
Well, we can maybe back up to going through each of these. Let me ask the applicant. So other than adding, which I think was one of the things that you sort of were conceding to, if we would allow or consider a C3, that you would add that lot 2, 3, 4, and 5 to that condition B?
That's correct.
And are you good with the rest of do the rest of the C3 conditions as recommended follow through with the development, so there's not any concern with the rest of that?
They're consistent with our existing conditions.
So the applicant's request, if you're looking at this drawing, is the only disagreement is staff, the upper two right highlighted in yellow, they're requesting C3 with conditions, and they're actually making it residential uses only as part of the C3 condition, but they're asking for C3, and the staff is recommending RTZ.
Correct. We feel the RTZ is better in alignment with the plan.
And then the rest of those, including the pink ones and the other yellow ones, are the other area. The other 4 areas are all recommendation C3 with conditions.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're in agreement with this. I think the applicant provided those conditions. We're in agreement with those conditions.
And there may be some questions about the reason why this, and you may have went through them. But are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions for staff or the applicant? And there was no opposition that I noticed earlier, although there's a lot more people in here now. So
I'll be there for one of the mandatory referral cases.
Okay, Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Black, let me get this clarified for everybody, because we've been throwing a lot of letters and numbers and conditions around. Which section do you disagree in?
I disagree with
the RTZ
yes, sir.
recommendation for area, what'd you call it, 1?
2, 3, 4, and 5, which is, I think, area 1
area
in the presentation.
1. It's area 1, and on their map, it's 2, 3, 4, and 5.
So you are asking for area 1 to be C3 with residential use only.
That's correct.
And that's the only disagreement that we have with staff. And given what we have directed staff in a previous line item, we think that this will probably quell the concern going forward, but this is a time-sensitive issue. So in order to make that motion, Brian, how do you want to hear that? Because I'm willing to make a motion on approval with area 1 being C3 with residential use only.
Yeah, you can just add, approve the applicant's request, add to item prohibited uses B, areas 2, 3, 4, and 5 to that residential uses only.
Okay.
We can work that out in the language.
Do you
as long
have
as that's
that? Is that
yes.
what you need?
Yep.
Because I'm going to answer to Councilwoman Coonrod tomorrow on why this didn't happen, so I'm going to make sure it happens.
We can blame John Bridger. He's leaving, so we can blame him. No, I got you what you need.
You got what I need?
Yeah.
That's in the form of a motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve C3 with conditions with the addition of 2, 3, 4, and 5 as residential uses only. Any discussion on the motion? See none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next case on our agenda is item 17. It's mandatory referral 2021-0060. It's located at 4126 Hooker Road, and it's mandatory referral for public property acquisition. Has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? I don't see any. We have a motion to approve.
I saw
think
something
he
in
was
the back.
waving across the room at somebody else. Was there any opposition?
This is on Hooker Road, 4126 Hooker Road.
We did have a motion. Did I hear a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is item 18, mandatory referral 2021-0065, and it's located at 5014 Creekside Preserve. It's a public property acquisition as well and has a staff recommendation to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is mandatory referral 2021-0068. This is located at 1151 East 23rd Street. And it's item 19. It's the mandatory referral for a lease agreement and has a staff recommendation to approve.
Mr. Chairman, this is the one I believe everybody's here for today. We did receive a lot of emails in opposition. We did have some in support, and I did send those emails as a PDF document to the Planning Commission over the weekend, as well as you have in front of you a Google sheet that summarizes a majority of those comments. So I think that's where everybody else is here for, is this case.
Okay. So if you're here in regards to that case, raise your hand.
This is the sculpture fields.
Gotcha. And if you're opposed to the lease agreement, raise your hand. And if you're in favor of the lease agreement, raise your hand. All right. Well, y'all segregated well. Good for y'all. All right. We'll hear Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, this is a mandatory referral, case 2021-68, mandatory referral for a portion. That's about 13 acres in size of what used to be the Montague Park for a lease agreement, a 40-year lease agreement, which Chattanooga FC Foundation, which my understanding, I believe, is to be used for soccer fields and rugby. I think it's combined, is my understanding. Here's the property located at 1151 East 23rd Street. You can see on the site these are sidewalks and paths to the sculpture fields. This is to the south along East 23rd. Again, it's 13 acres in size. The intention between this lease agreement is to lease these again to the Chattanooga FC for soccer fields. Here's a view of the site from East 23rd Street. That's another view of the site looking from East 23rd Street. It's currently zoned M1 manufacturing. To the north is M1. To the northeast is UGC, Urban General Commercial. But everything around this is manufacturing uses. The M1 zone does have that catch-all phrase that any other lawful use is permitted in that zone. But for mandatory referrals, we typically just look at the zoning. We also look at what the intended use is. So soccer fields and sculpture fields would be permitted in that zone. So staff looked at this. These are difficult for staff to actually review and determine, but staff finds that the lease agreement does not negatively impact the health, safety, and well-being of the public. So staff recommended to approve. A lot of the comments, also, I don't want to speak for the opposition, but a lot of the comments we received that I did glance through were, the sculpture fields needs the remaining 13 acres for expansion. They have plans for future expansion of the sculpture fields. The sculpture fields are a nice, quaint asset to the community. A lot of money and sales tax comes into the people visiting the sculpture fields. And then of course, we have people in support, and I'll let them speak on that. So with that, staff recommended to approve the lease agreement. This will ultimately go on to City Council for recommendation. Again, this is a mandatory referral. Unless the applicant requests to defer, we cannot, as Planning Commission, you cannot defer the application. Because within 30 days, they're deemed approved if no action is taken.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Farmer.
Is this the current area that I see people playing rugby in all the time? That's the use it is now, right there on the corner?
It's on the corner. I'm not sure what actually is happening on that piece of property, but it is on the corner. I assume this is where way back when the softball fields used to be there.
Yeah.
That's where most of these softball fields was in this general area. It's closer to 23rd Street. If you go back with that little monument sign that says Montague Park, it's all right through here.
I'm sure somebody will clear that up for us here in a minute. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff, Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Brian, in order to get to the lease agreement part into a mandatory referral, this went through a process with the city. And that process was an RFP. And I believe this case went through, or this RFP was sent out twice.
John, maybe answer. I don't know about that. I know
COVID played a role in delaying it, which is obviously understandable. But it went through an RFP process. So this actually came through the city's purchasing process and was the winning bid for the use of that spot. Everybody had a chance to, and I know we don't have anybody. Well, I don't want to put more on the spot.
I was looking for Gail Hart.
I was looking for Gail. There she is. Gail, there you are. Gail.
Oh, Gail's over there. Gail could probably answer better than I can.
Gail, can you come up real quick? I want to make sure I understand this correctly, though. This was put out to bid through RFP, and this was the winning bid that the city awarded, was the use of this, that what we're seeing right now.
Yes, in fact, it did go out for bid twice. We issued the RFP in August of 2019, and at that time we were set to award it to Chattanooga FC Foundation. However, with the onset of COVID and the subsequent delays in everything, we felt with the time that lapsed between the time that we were able to move forward again, it was only fair to issue the RFP again and give everyone a fair chance to resubmit.
Okay.
So we did.
So this has gone through twice
Yes.
through our process.
So in October 2020, we did issue the RFP again. We had 3 responses. There was a review committee. It went through purchasing. The review committee recommended Chattanooga FC Foundation. We went through several other required steps. There was a protest. The protest was reviewed. We sent the proposal to Paul Hatcher, who is the attorney for the Montague family. He sent us back an email giving his blessing and that of the Montague family of the proposal from Chattanooga FC, and only after we had that did we decide to move forward and file the application for the lease, the mandatory referral.
Okay, so my understanding of the process is verified by what you just stated. Okay, thank you. That's all I have right now, Chairman.
Any other questions before we hear from the applicant? Well, I guess Gail and
Okay, we'll
Mr.
wait
Brock,
for the
go ahead.
questions from the opposition, and I also have with me Crew Brock, Executive Director of the Chattanooga FC Foundation, and one of us will be able to address their concerns.
Okay, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
So we'll hear from the opposition first. If you don't mind, if you're here in opposition and you'd like to speak, go ahead and get out of your seats, come up over to this left side of my left side, your right side of the room, and line up behind the podium there. We have 9 minutes total for opposition, so I want to make sure I can hear from as many of you as possible. State your name and address for the record, and then have at it.
Good afternoon. My name is Bill Robinson. My address, you'd like my address? 6415 Chase's Landing, Hickson. I'm the secretary of the board of the sculpture field, And the chair of the board of the sculpture field is Bill Overen, and he is out of town and unable to attend today, so he asked me to speak on behalf of the board. First of all, I want to thank you for allowing us to have some time to speak. This is actually the first time we've had an opportunity to speak to anyone about this. You're absolutely correct about the process. There was a process just like you described, but it was written submissions to an anonymous committee, and we have not had a chance to talk to anyone, ask questions about what factors went into the decision to allow the Chattanooga Foundation, Chattanooga Football Club Foundation, to have the property. We think that the Chattanooga Football Club Foundation does very good work. We don't have any issue with what they do or how they do it. Our real issue is they can put soccer fields in lots of different places. There are soccer fields in lots of different places around Chattanooga. The sculpture field has nowhere else to go but those 13 acres. We've been in existence for almost 10 years. We've put a lot of work into building up the 33 acres we have, putting sculptures, world-class sculptures on those 33 acres, and we would like to expand into that 13 acres. If at some point in the future, Chattanooga Football Club Foundation decides it wants to move somewhere else, it's really not much trouble for it to move to another spot. For example, if the stories that I've heard that there may be development down on the river for athletic fields and maybe the baseball park, soccer fields may want to move down there. Sculpture field can't do that. We have nowhere to go. We've got to stay in this area where we are. We love this area. We're right downtown. We're where we want to be. We're open dawn to dusk, 365 days a year. During the pandemic, we still had lots of visitors, and we'd like to continue that and expand that. So our concern is if this commission approves a 40-year lease, that's a long time. We would like to see, first of all, we would like this commission to defer this decision until we can talk to the city council about the entire process. If the commission cannot defer the decision, we'd like you to reduce the time of the lease, maybe 5 years. Let the foundation see what it's going to do, see if it likes the spot. Because, as I said, we plan to be there another 40, 50, 100 years. We have no place else to go. But the soccer fields can go. They can move somewhere else. One of the things that I thought was interesting in the articles in the paper this weekend was a comment that 40 years ago, soccer wasn't very popular. People didn't play soccer 40 years ago, and it's only been since then that soccer has become popular. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 40 years. We don't know whether soccer will continue to be popular for 40 more years, whether something else will take over and soccer will not be as popular. We just think that's a long time to tie up the only property that we have access to that we can use. Finally, to the extent that you have control over the terms of the lease, we would like to be directly involved in those discussions regarding the lease and how the relationship between the foundation and the sculpture field will work. We didn't know the details of the foundation's proposal until we saw it in the newspaper. So we have not talked with them about the details of a lease, about how we will work together. We expect them to be good neighbors. We plan to be good neighbors. But, you have to work together on the details in order to have a good relationship. So we want to be involved in that as well. Does anyone have questions for me?
Any questions? Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Robinson, I appreciate you coming down and talking with us. I understand you wish for a deferral, but based on that might be difficult for a deferral to be in a time frame for having the city to go through that RFP process. I know I've been looking at it for 4 years now, so I think that that is probably not going to happen in the time frame that we would need in order to get this through the process there. Plus, that would be a charge that City Council would have to put upon the purchasing department. And we've been trying for several years, and we're working through some things with some recent developments, but it's going to take a lot of time. So I'm not sure that's going to be a reason for a deferral from the City Council's perspective, and that's where I'm able to speak from on that. Have you had a chance, or I see that Mr. Brock's in the room. Has anybody reached out from your organization to the FC Club, and have you all sat down and had a beer?
No, we haven't. We probably should. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm Ann Rushing. I'm Executive Director of Sculpture Fields. We have had early stages on some conversations, and we want to have some more. We have not. COVID has kind of slowed everything down.
Absolutely.
But
I
yes,
just know that's
we have had initial conversations. I called Mr. Brock when we were protesting just to let him know it's not against you guys. We're just looking out for Sculpture Fields and what our long-term plans are.
Completely understand that, and I would encourage that conversation to happen, and I bet you I would get an amen from Mr. Brock back there. There it is, that he would open up his heart and open up your hearts to get together and find out a great use for our community, because the last thing we need is a disconnect in conversation with any kind of shared space in our community. But I just want to make sure you knew that from where I come from. That's a very important part of wherever we go with this. And but that's all I have for right now for you all. And I want to thank you all for coming down. And things are beautiful over there. My wife and I enjoy it as well. Seeing I'm the only one up here, I think, who has a degree in art. So I certainly appreciate it from my background.
Well, all of you should come out there. Beautiful, world-class sculpture all over the place. Great place to walk around, take your kids, bring your dog. It's a great place.
Oh, that reminds me, if I can, Chairman, please. In some of the letters I read, and this might be something, and I'm going way past where I should be going with this, but I see Mr. Brock here, and I'm taking the opportunity to try to build bridges. Vandalism and kids using or doing something they shouldn't be doing around the sculpture fields, those are the types of conversations that I'm hoping will be had, because we certainly would want to protect not only our children, because I think some of those could be pretty dangerous, and also protect the sculptures. But is that the kind of conversation that we need to foster and to sit down and talk about?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's a difficult line to walk along, because we want to be open to everybody in the city. We don't want to say children at the soccer fields can't come into the sculpture field. We don't want to say that at all. But we are concerned, and we do want to protect anybody who comes into the sculpture field. So
sure.
We definitely need to have that conversation.
And it's a great advantage to me for children to see such incredible pieces of art. You may inspire the next sculpture artist in that group by being so close to it. I've been thinking about this a lot, and I really do appreciate you all coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For staff, what is Planning Commission's role in the mandatory referral? What is it that we are actually voting on? Because it's not the RFP.
Essentially, you're just making a recommendation to approve or deny. We really can't have any kind of qualified approval, because it's just a review. So you're making it. Now, I think that you can make comments for the record, so that can be noted. But as far as the motion, it has to be approve or deny.
Yeah, and it's really a change in use of public property. It's why it's in front of the Planning Commission, based on the state law clarifies the mandatory referrals. It's a lease agreement, and I guess it can. Planning Commission can't defer it unless the applicant requests. Now, City Council, my understanding, can if they wish.
I'm sorry. I just want to understand what you said. They have to either approve or deny the 40-year lease.
That's right. This body can't modify that. Not City Council. They have wider discretion, but this body is really responding specifically to the request at hand.
So a denial
recommendation
would simply push this down the road until we can have discussion.
It basically still moving on to City Council for final action.
Okay.
Any further questions for the opposition? Thank you.
Thank you.
Come back up.
I'd like Mr. Brock to come up and speak for just a couple of minutes to talk about the proposed development.
Thanks for having me. And again, I'll be brief, but to the point. I think I really appreciate the process we've been through. I'm a big fan of the sculpture fields. We would not have put in our RFP if we didn't think this was going to be a supplement and complement to what's already there. We would not do anything that detracts from or hurts the good work they've put in the last 10, 11 years. So very excited about this potential because I think it will really help bring even deeper inclusion and diversity to a space and allow more interaction in a way. And we'll do everything we can to be good neighbors. So I just want to make sure I communicate that. We have hopes of really one integrated park at the end of the day, but we just have to work to do that. So it's safe and well done. But again, I'm really happy with the work we do. I'm excited about it. And again, like Ann Rushing said, we have been in initial conversations. Bridges are built. We will continue those, and appreciate the opportunity. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Ledford.
Chairman, at this time, I'd like to make a motion, given what I've heard from both sides.
We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all. All right, next on our agenda is an amendment and resolution. Item 20 is a resolution to amend Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 38, Zoning Ordinance, Article, I don't know what that is, 16, Downtown Chattanooga Form-Based Code, Division 2, Signs, Section 38, 753, Sign Types to Projecting Signs. I'm assuming there's no opposition, but Mr. Bridger, I guess it'd be helpful just to brief us on 20, and we can take some action on it.
Yeah, this was discussed last month as a request from Form-Based Code Committee. It wasn't clear on how you count signage, the size amount on corner lots. So this came from them as a request to clarify the language. And so what we're doing is in the red, adding those amendments. Everything in white is currently in the form-based code. So the proposed amendment on A is keep everything the same, but add the word and. So really what we're doing at the end of the day is a corner lot, a corner building has a corner sign. That square footage, in this example here, you have a corner building. That's a 3-foot by 8-foot corner projecting sign. That's 12 foot per side. So you get to count half of that, as well as the projecting sign on the flat or on the remainder of the building as your total square footage. So gotcha. All we're doing is clarifying that. On B and C, we're just underlining the square footage to make it sort of clear that you're on one projecting sign, 12 square feet or more is permitted, just making that stand out a little bit more. We're adding D. The square footage of any corner sign counts towards the maximum square footage for each side of the building. The square footage of the corner sign will be divided evenly between the two building sides. That's what this picture illustrates. So basically, you get to have a way it was worded before. There was a case that came up. I think it was on Main Street, I believe. There was a corner sign. It wasn't clear if you could do the corner sign. That's all you could do. So form-based code had different opinions on that, the committee, so they wanted us to change that and clarify what that was. So we're doing that. And the last thing is this is the existing square footage requirements for signs. Under the max square footage sign under A, it wants to be clear that it's per building side. So we're adding that into red. It's just per building side to that requirement. So it's really clarifying, cleaning up how you count the signage for projecting signs.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions? I'll need a motion.
I move to approve both resolutions.
We have a motion on 20 and 21 to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. We're on 7, staff updates.
Yes, this is not really, I should say staff updates, but, as you remember, 2 months ago, home builders requested some proposed amendments, and staff reviewed those, and last month, in April, we provided our assessment of those proposed amendments, and we are following up on those with proposed amendments. And I'll quickly remind, everybody's ready to go home. I'll try to go through this as quick as I can. Oh, I thought we took action on both. Yeah, so we had a lot of changes requested by the home builders. We went through those and discussed those last month. Planning Commission directed staff to come back with some changes, so I'll make sure we're on the same page. Again, they were focusing on 3 buckets, if you will: infrastructure improvements, flag lots, and zoning. The first one under infrastructure was it reduced pavement width from 26 feet to 22 feet. We as a Planning Commission as a body, not we, but Planning Commission as a body, agreed to make no changes to that, leave that alone to have future discussions related to fire codes. Second suggested improvement was to reduce pavement width from 22 feet to 20 feet and change the definition from 10 lots or less to 40 lots or less for flag lots or cul-de-sacs, short cul-de-sacs. Planning Commission agreed, no changes on that, so we didn't bring nothing in front of the Planning Commission for review. The third under infrastructure was reduced requirement width for sidewalks from 5 feet to 4 feet. There were no suggested changes from Planning Commission on that. Leave that as is. Flag lots was the second bucket. Proposed request was change the minimum lot area from 1 acre to 1/4 acre, or 10,809 square feet. Staff agreed, Planning Commission agreed, and we have provided an amendment to that flag lot standard. The second one was to reduce the minimum flag lot frontage from 25 feet to 15 feet. Staff agreed, Planning Commission agreed with the request, and we have drafted an amendment. Flag lot setbacks shall be the same as the underlying zone. Staff agreed with that request. Planning Commission agreed, and we have drafted an amendment to that request. The fourth bullet was remove a variance requirement for more than 2 flag lots in a major subdivision. Right now, you can only do 2 flag lots in a subdivision without seeking a variance. So staff did not support that, but there was discussion at Planning Commission last month. The Planning Commission directed staff to come back with amendment. We have done that. And here's what the new language will look like. I think I misspoke last month and told you I would have these amendments ready for adoption today's Planning Commission, but we have to give 30 days notice. And when that Planning Commission happened, we didn't have any direction on what to add or not add, so we couldn't do the advertisement. So these will come back in June due to the legal requirement. So what we're doing is under the definition of a flag lot. That's not changing with the exception of the things that have a strike through. Those are standards that are in the definition. That shouldn't be in there, so I'm taking those out and actually moving those to the appropriate code. Taking any kind of standard out of the definition makes sense, and it shouldn't be there. So 402.7 flag lots, this is already in the subregs. This really defines what a flag lot is. There's no changes to that. Section 402.8, for flag lots located in new major subdivisions, the following standards apply to flag lots. Anything recorded after June 14th, 2021, which is our next Planning Commission meeting, the flag lot, these standards will apply. This doesn't apply to existing flag lots. These standards will only apply to new flag lots created after that date of June 14th and in new major subdivisions. So basically, lot frontage is being reduced to 15 feet. This will be reviewed by the Hamilton County Emergency Management Agency for adequate fire access. We're also going to note on the plat, the subdivision plat, the distance of the proposed home to the curb is going to be required to be noted on the subdivision plat just for those lots in a cul-de-sac. The lot area, not counting the flag stem, will be specified in the underlying zone instead of a minimum 1 acres. Building setbacks, right now it's 25 foot for the front, side, and rear. This amendment reduces that to whatever the underlying zoning designation is, and those setbacks for flag lots will be noted on the plat. This will help building inspections to determine what those front, side, and rear setbacks are. We also clarified section 402.8.4. There shall be only one principal/primary residential dwelling per flag lot, regardless of the flag lot. Now, this, I think Commissioner Farmer brought this up last month, but what if I have a detached garage and I want to put an apartment above that or ADU? We certainly agree with that. That's why we're trying to say here only one principal or primary residence is allowed on a flag lot. You can still do your detached garage or ADU. We're also changing 402.8.5, or adding this basically, to state that you can do no more than 3 contiguous flag lots in any new major subdivision. Before, you had to get a variance. We're changing this now to say you can do no more than 3 contiguous. You can do 3, then, if you will, space, and then 3 more, if you will. Not that anybody would do that, but this is one way of trying to control someone from doing flag lots down a whole street. Never say never, I know. So that's where we are in the flag lots. I think we agree with all the recommendations proposed by the home builders or suggested by the home builders. And so the next bucket, if you will, is zoning.
Can I stop
Yes.
and just make sure? So these flag lot changes are only in new developments after June 14th.
Yes.
So if I have an existing 5-acre tract or 20-acre tract that has a bunch of frontage, I fall back under the existing
rules
for flag lots, only 3 contiguous,
Right.
that type of. Okay.
Right, because it's not a new major subdivision.
Right.
And by that we mean new
We're
roads.
striking all of this to allow some flexibility in new major subdivisions that still meet all the same.
So if you look at the
Okay.
subregs, you'll have 2 sections. You'll have
Right.
the section for new major subdivisions and then the old
Perfect.
standards.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions?
I do. Thank you, Chairman. Brian, what kind of lag time, once the new rules or regs go in, what's the lag time for folks to have a buffer?
They'll be effective as of June 14th.
So what are we doing education-wise to property owners before that to make sure people are not caught off guard with?
No changes to the existing property owners. They won't. Nothing's going to change.
No, I
on
got
their part.
that. People going forward.
I think they'll be happy with the change, but we can certainly send out an email to all of our contacts we have through surveyors and developers that we frequently have
And I'm
contact
sure
with.
the home builders representative who's with us in the back of the room who's hung out for a while will make sure
the word gets out.
The
And
word gets out. Mr.
We also
Fisher?
have a new thing that we're doing at RPA that Karen Rennick is very excited about. It's
Email?
MailChimp. We're sending out, if you sign up for MailChimp, it sends out notifications of exciting news and things that are happening at RPA. One of those will be amendments. It's news, so it's coming out. So we'll get the word out best we can.
Okay, I just want to make sure people know ahead of time so they're not caught off
Right.
guard going, well, I looked at this 6 months ago and it was this, now what have you done?
Well, I don't, because this is applying to anything new, moving forward, new major subdivisions, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I understand your point.
Yeah, people plan. I mean,
Yeah.
they do
Well, this,
plan.
I would say, if anything, this is really releasing less restrictions, so it should, to my knowledge, it wouldn't create any additional change. It creates actually more flexibility and more options for how you do it.
So we're leaving it maybe better than we found it?
I hope so. I think so.
Oh, I like that. Thank you, Chairman.
Well, our sub-regs are like our zoning code, written 50 years ago. We've never touched them, other than tweaking them over the year. The last bucket, if you will, is dealing with zoning. The request was to modify the existing R1 zone to reduce the minimum lot frontage on sewer and septic from 60 feet to 45 feet, and the minimum lot area on sewer and septic from 7,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. Staff felt the better option was to leave the R1 zone as is, because that's been around for many, many years. Maybe not that exact terminology, R1, but R1 we fall back to as our typical single family, if you will, our sanctity zone. It's a safe, larger lot, single family dwellings. We felt the better approach was to draft a new zone that allowed flexibility. And we brought that up. I think Planning Commission agreed with that, to draft a new zone that did reduce the standards. Commissioner Farmer made a suggestion last month. Now, he would prefer to see amendments to the R1 zone. Please draft that and bring it back. We've done that. And I'll get in that in a few minutes. The second request was to increase the maximum lot occupancy from 35% to 55%. Again, staff was thinking our position was to create a new zone smaller lot zone and just take out that maximum lot occupancy. We did that in the proposed zone, but in the existing R1, we did add that at the request of Commissioner Farmer. Reduce setbacks to R1. The request was changed from 25 feet to 15 on the front. And then keep the side as is, which is 5, and change the rear setback from 25 feet to 15 feet. Again, staff suggestion was a new zone. Mr. Farmer proposed amending the R1. Section 303, item J, to be removed. This is in the RT1 zone where it talks about any townhome units over 8 or more units. You had to be within 500 feet of a collector or arterial road. We agreed to remove that. Planning Commission directed staff to remove that. So that draft has been added to amend that stipulation. The third or second bullet here is to increase A1 density cap from 2 units per acre to 4 units per acre. Staff did not agree with that. You'll see in a minute on our chart a range of options of why we recommended to keep 2 units per acre in A1 zone. Planning Commission agreed and felt the A1 zone was working. If you wanted more density, you'd rezone to the R1. So no changes were proposed on revising the A1. And then the third one was finally dealing with septic tank minimum lot size requirements. We felt the current standards are working as they are. No proposed changes. Let your lot sizes, if you will, to be determined by your septic tank review through groundwater protection. So no changes were proposed. Now, this may be a little hard to see on the screen, but this is trying to show you scales or ranges, starting from the left side, which is A1, working your way over to RT1, which is increasing density or intensity, if you will. The item in the green that's highlighted is intensity levels. I range from A1, which is very low, all the way up to high, which is 18 or more in our existing RT1. A1 is 2 units per acre. R1, which is our current R1, it has 7,500 square foot lot sizes. If you work that in per acre, that's about roughly 5 dwelling units per acre. That's still low. We have the R1 PUD. It doesn't increase the density. You're still stuck at 5 dwelling units per acre. That's still low. Then, if you look on the screen, we jump from the R1 PUD all the way over to RTZ, which is a medium. There's no, if you will, medium/low zone that allows only single family detached dwelling units. So in this column here in the yellow that you see, that's the proposed zone that staff drafted. This is R1 5000, if you will. You can name it whatever you want to name it, but we're proposing this R1 5000 zone. The intent of this zone was to be on sewers, to be single family detached dwellings only. That was a medium density, if you work it out, that's a medium density or intensity level. Works out to be about 8.7 dwelling units per acre. Lot size of 5,000 square feet. It will not be permitted on septic tanks. There is no maximum density. Lot size on sewer, we were proposing 50-foot minimum lot frontage. Also on setbacks, the front setback was 20 feet. It could be reduced down to 10 feet if you provide rear or alley rear loaded access. Side setback, keep the same at 5 foot. And then the rear, we were changing that, proposing to change that to 15 foot and 20 foot and no perimeter setback. Under Commissioner Farmer's request, which is in the gray, that's taking the existing R1 and making those changes. The only change you make is the minimum lot size. Change that from 7,500 square foot to 6,000, no maximum density. Change the minimum lot frontage to 50 foot on sewers. Change your setbacks to 20 on the front and rear. Keep the side the same. And then also at the very bottom, change those occupancy standards. That's where we are today. Now, if you look at the screen, by changing the R1, we went back and looked. Back in the 40s, there was no zone that said R1. It was I think it was urban residential, if you will. That lot size was 10,000 square feet. 1972, it changed to 7,500 square foot. So from 40s to 70s, it was always 10,000. But then 72, it changed to 7,500. Now fast forward to 2021, we're asking to change it again. And I think our staff, correct me if I'm wrong, John, I think just looking at the intensity scale and ranges here, by changing the R1, we're still missing something. We jumped from low to the high end of medium intensity. We need I think we as staff are saying, let's keep this R1 as it is. That's our low/medium intensity level. Let's create this new zone, which is the R1 5000, that gets you to your smaller lots, a little bit higher intensity levels, but still keeps it R1 on the books. And it's all about transparency, if you will. We've had the R1 zone on the books forever. And by changing these, you are somewhat changing the pattern that people expect when you see R1. So hopefully that answers sort of where we are. We've got two options for you. Actually, do both, I assume. You can amend the existing R1 to go with what Commissioner Farmer suggested. Approve both, this R1 amendment and this new R1 5000 zone.
So that's I think the question is, we prepared those draft ordinances that were emailed to you. So I think we're asking now for your direction, what do we put on the agenda for next month for action? Or do you have any questions about what staff share with you? So basically, we're setting up the agenda for next month.
And I failed to mention, Mr. Farmer didn't ask this, but we added it into one of the amendments. If you amend the R1, does that start effectively today, or does it start effective after county commission adoption date? So one of those draft amendments had that built in. It was like, I think it was July 21st is when it goes to the county. Everything after July 21st, that's when the new standards would apply. But Mr. Farmer didn't ask that, so we just built it in. We've talked about it. So that's where we are. Number one, amend the existing R1, keep the existing R1 as it is, and create a new R1 5000 zone, or whatever you want to call it.
Mr. Payne.
You mentioned a couple times that there's no limit to density, but there's a square footage minimum. So in effect, there is a density limit, correct? Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, there's no max. Like some of the zones have a max of 8. We didn't.
But if you limit it to how many square foot the lot has to be, then you in effect do put a max. There is a max. I mean, there's 44,000, square foot and acres.
Right.
I mean, you're limiting.
I think what you're alluding to, sometimes the zone has a minimum lot size and a density
It's
cap.
max.
Sometimes they do the density cap so that you can't but I think what you're talking about, Commissioner Payne, is yes, a lot size in and of itself has a density implication. Yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, no, sorry, go ahead.
Mr.
I guess start off with a process question. So y'all are looking for guidance today on what we're going to put on the agenda for next month. So say we give you that guidance today and y'all come in with something. If we wanted to make modifications to it at that point, once we bring it, we could still have the ability to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, you can modify them. Yes.
That's correct. We just need to get a direction if you want both these brought before you or one of them, or
that was my next comment. So,
yeah.
So I think that there is, as Mr. Schultz was saying, that there is a need for a more intense residential zone, such as described in the yellowish column in the new zone that the staff has created. I also do think that, as Mr. Farmer proposed in our last meeting, that there is a need for some just what I see as reasonable and moderate updates to the traditional R1 zone. I think it's, as y'all talked about, it's really been 40 years since there's been any kind of major updates to that, and that is by far and away, maybe not by far and away, but one of the most common residential zones in our county. And I think that it's important that we make a zone that is so prominent functional with today's development trends and what people are looking for and what works for modern housing. So, at least me personally, I would like to see us move forward with both of those zones. I mean, with the modifications to the R1 and also with the new zone.
Mr. Bridger.
And just to be clear, in terms of the R1 change, you may recall at one point we modified the side yard setbacks, and it kind of applied to new subdivisions. So I guess the question is, you think about that direction to staff. Do you want that modification? Because here's what I would process is, if you change it just outright, then if you have an older R1 subdivision, technically somebody could apply those new standards to that older subdivision that's already been built out. Or if the intention is more for new subdivisions going forward, and I think that's where the amendment was it'd be applied basically to new subdivisions after a certain date. So just we want to make sure you give some thought to how you direct us on that regard.
I would be open to other people's comments here, but I think the way we did it with the side yard setbacks was appropriate for it would be new major subdivision.
And I failed to mention too, because if you do want to amend the existing R1 to change that to 6,000 square foot, that's about 7.2 dwelling units per acre. If you look at the current PUD R1, it's 5. I think we also need to amend that to make it match. So one of the resolutions will include that to make the PUD density match.
Any other comments? Mr. Fisher, did you wish to say anything?
No.
Okay.
We just need to know what direction to go.
You want a formal motion, that's what put on the agenda. Yeah. So let me say, I heard everything the staff says, and I appreciate it. This is about affordability and housing accessibility to me. This is happening all over the country. This is not new to Hamilton County for these reduced lot sizes whatsoever. I would make a formal motion that we accept all of the staff changes that have been outlined, with the exception that we direct staff to bring the changes to the existing R1, and that become effective with new subdivisions. And we also add the change to the PUD language as well. Is that clear enough?
We do have a motion. Second. And it has been properly seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Mabey. Yes. Basically, everything the staff has recommended and outlined that they agreed with the home builder's proposal that we've talked about, but including and additionally the change to R1 and the change to the PUD.
And that has that effective date, right?
That's effective date. Thank you. And the effective date is when it.
I'll put county commission date. Usually is what I put.
That's correct.
We do.
Yes, both of those should be brought forward for us for a vote. Yes.
All right, we've got a motion and a second on the table. Mr. Fisher, did you want to say something?
Yes, sir, if possible. Start with thank you to the staff for your hard work on this. We appreciate the cooperation and working through this process with you. There was one piece in this whole thing that came back that we were a little bit confused about, and I wanted to make sure that the 25,000 square feet lot density on septic and or I always get that confused. I think it was well did not change from what we got rescinded.
No, it goes back the way it was previously.
Okay,
it stays the way it was.
All right, it was a little confusing.
Yeah, we tried to clarify that back in February. Then they got rescinded, and it goes back to the original. It's the and. It's not clear, but it's going back. It's rescinded.
Okay. All right.
So we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Can you go back to that slide? So if you came back with these, and if Planning Commission voted in favor of them, and they went to County Commission, and they were approved in terms of the changes to R1 in our county would be, I don't know what the right word is, but it would be more pro-development than R1 in our urban overlay in the city of Chattanooga.
Yeah, we don't
because right now in the urban overlay, and I just say urban overlay because I think that's my point, that we have a 7,500 square foot lot minimum and a 60-foot lot frontage. And, looking at a zoning map, you've got all these properties that are in the middle of R1 that are being rezoned as RTZ to try to work around that. Can the work that's being done at the county level be mirrored at a city level in regards to the amendment to
we
R1?
are, not necessarily at this point, but we just hired, our city has that project going forward with
but
Camaros.
that's months and months, whereas this has taken I mean, it's not finished, but
It's not
this
finished.
is 60 days
We
from
have
possibly being done.
We have gotten the initial assessment from Camrose on the zoning code. We're going through that now. Of course, new administration coming on board, we want to brief them with it and where we are and stuff.
I
Maybe
think
John can ask probably more guidance to that than I can
Yeah, I
at this
think
point.
they've already got a draft report, so I think clearly we would need to bring what's taking place with this to their attention. As we think about the zone prototypes for our urban, that's something we certainly will need to consider. But as you know, that's also another.
But all of that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mean to be argumentative,
Sure.
but all of that is going to be just like the yellow that we see on this screen.
Right.
It's not going to be changes to, I mean, you would know better, you've seen it.
Well, that's a
but-
good point. That's what we tried to mention last month, even in our
Yeah.
report. These zones that we're proposing in the county, you don't have that in the city. I mean, you can via RTZ or UGC.
Right.
It gets you there. And we have even drafted those urban residential zones. We're probably at 80 to 90% baked on those. We're just waiting on Camrose to come back and say, hey, you guys are on track, finish it up. Or
But here's the problem, and I mean, this is not me arguing with you, but this is just me saying we've got a massive shortage in housing. And if today we went out and put, I don't know, 4,000 units on the ground in Chattanooga, we would not have an oversupply. But we can't put 4,000 units on the ground, and I say we, being the city of Chattanooga, can't do that because of our current zoning regulations and the fact that there aren't that many lots available. And so there's a whole host of problems. If we don't actually change the underlying zones that we have, then they come through this public process, and we have rooms full of opposition to people building houses.
Yeah.
And then, our poor city council people and county commissioners are getting these phone calls from people that are mad because a neighborhood is being built in their backyard, not a Target or a Walmart or a racetrack, but a neighborhood. So, I mean, the changes have to be to the code like it has been proposed for the existing R1 amendment. There has to be some similar action taken at a city level, or we're going to have more developer-friendly, lower-priced lots in our suburbs than we do our urban areas. And
that's the problem
just
with our zoning
force
code,
urban sprawl. I mean, we're literally pushing it.
And
that
staff's
way.
frustrated because we look at projects, we like the project. Unfortunately, that tool, there's no tool to get them there. We have to, put a UGC zone in a neighborhood.
But,
and
I mean, to that
condition it.
end, theoretically, R1, in the same way that there's an amendment right here in front of us or will be next month, there could be an amendment for our city's R1. Right? I mean, that's theoretically possible.
It could.
To decrease the lot size from 7,500 square feet to 5,000 square feet and decrease the lot frontage from 60 feet to 45 feet, which would make sense, especially in the urban overlay zone, which we have.
Chair, what I would like to do on that one, I think, probably good get involved, the city planning and zoning committee involved in that. And I mean, certainly we could.
But, I mean, we didn't go through all that to change this.
Well, it's going to have to anyway.
Yeah.
It's going to have to anyway.
And I think the difference, too.
Time is not on our side.
I got it.
So 6 more months, 9 more months, there's that many more lots developed that are further and further outside the city that are just continuing to perpetuate the very problem that we have.
And I think, I don't want to speak, we got a new administration on board, I think has different opinions of where they want to go with some of our zoning. And what we're hearing, they're very progressive towards changing things. It's getting ADUs on board. Other changes, I think, are coming.
They're getting aggressive on infill.
Yeah, infill.
Looking at the stock that the city has, and I think it's not right.
Yeah. And I'm excited to share with y'all at some point what our zoning, we all know what our zoning code assessment is going to say. Now, our next step is taking that and fixing it.
But I'm just saying right now, if it's introducing 9 new zones that all require a developer or a property owner to change from R1 to whatever the new zone is, then it doesn't fix the problem because we still have a room full of opposition, which we're not seeing right now because of COVID, but they're coming back.
And that's what we said in the county, too. Just look at the county. If you look at that report we did, there's not a lot of R1 zones out there now. A lot of it's still A1. You're going to have to rezone it anyway to R1. So it wasn't like there's an abundant amount of R1 zone already in the county.
I'd say, Chair, another thing, too, I think what you're getting to actually is upzoning. And I think, again, one advantage of the Historic River Ridge plan is it talks about areas that we're promoting more intensive development along corridors. And so it's always within the option of council or somebody to initiate an upzoning to get the zoning taken care of. So that way, to your point, you're just going to permitting at that point. You're not having another politicized process to get through just to begin to even think about getting permits. And so what you're talking about there, which I would say that Historic River Ridge plan sets the stage for, is upzoning. To allow, to kind of remove that hurdle so that folks, there is not a political rezoning process. I mean, clearly the upzoning itself is a rezoning process, but once you're done with that, you're just going to permit it.
And there's moves across the country to change R1 zoning to allow more units, like duplexes, triplexes. Why are they excluded from the R1 zone? That's all across the country.
Furthermore, why do you have to create a landscape buffer between two attached units and the house next to it? I mean, it's so messed up. If we don't get about the business of fixing it, we're just going to continue to drive more and more future, Chattanooga, Hamilton County residents outside of the city and county.
I will say, staff's just as frustrated. Every month we do staff review of zonings. We're like, man, we like this project, just like the department got R3 today. We beat that to death
So
as a staff.
how does Planning Commission start that ball rolling? Because what I'm hearing is there's a report coming from the consultant.
Right.
But that report is 30 to 60 days before it just seems like it takes forever to change anything. And here we are 60 days away from having successfully, amended the R1 zone in the county. Why can't we be 60 days away from amending the R1 zone in the city? I mean, simply put, if it's possible in the county in 60 days, why is it not possible in the city in 60 days?
Chair, I will get with the mayor's staff and just compare notes, because I know there's some things we're trying to get done and see what we can do to expedite that time frame. But I need to at least talk to them and get some feedback.
Sure. Mr. Farmer.
Can you give us just, I know it's late, but where are we on the zoning?
Sure. Sure.
And then also, when do we get it?
Sure. I think we've gotten a draft. We received a draft, so we're looking at that. The mayor's staff is looking at it. We would like to roll that out in June or July to PC. I think a lot of it is depending on what's on everybody's dockets. I know there's a lot discussion on with budget and some other things. So I don't know if it's going to be June or July, but I do know that from my conversations with the mayor's staff is they want to move quickly on some of these changes because they also see the housing issues we have in the city that need to be addressed. I can say that the consultant report does talk about creating more opportunity for, they call it going up and going small. But that's the idea, meaning allowing folks more opportunities by right to do more intensity along corridors, and the idea of allowing more housing variations on the site like ADUs. So I think there's alignment. I think it's a matter of how we communicate that to the appropriate parties. Because, once you start, you can't reel it back in. So we want to make sure that we communicate, because we tried the ADUs a year and a half ago. Councilman Lever can tell you what happened with that. So we just want to make sure we want to do it smart. We know there's a sense of urgency, but we want to make sure we do it right so that we get to our destination. Sure. Sure. I'd be happy to set one up. We'll look at trying to set. Yeah. So I think there will be one, and I'll see when we can get that done. It's just I just know that we got new administration. They're trying to get their teeth around it, and so we want to make sure we've gotten their feedback.
I say what we've read, it's been a fair assessment. Most times it's not, especially our consultants, it's a really good, fair assessment of our zoning code.
And in terms of creating, I think
New zones.
I give another tidbit. Talked about we really only have there's no, getting back to these options, it's like you either meet the code or you don't, and then it's a hard process to get a variance, right? And talk about the idea of having some more opportunities for staff flexibility, interpretation before you go to BOZA, so you don't have this hard you're in or you're out kind of. So they've talked about some things that we could definitely do better in our zoning code in terms of our processes and our standards to meet what we're trying to do in terms of the housing marketplace. Well, by state, you got to have a BOZA, by state law. But I think there are options, there are other administrative tools you can use, because BOZA is really set up to be very strict. I mean, it's set up by state law. They're not set up to provide that flexibility, but there are other things you can empower through the code to allow staff to do. You don't have to worry about having to go to BOZA every time you don't meet the.
I think what they're saying too, which we know, there's a lot of use on reviews that are going to BOZA that really probably don't need to go there, and changing a lot of that. We've done that in the county. We've taken a lot of that stuff from the county back to Planning Commission. Yeah, the setbacks, lot size, and lot frontage. That's really, or determine did the building inspector interpret that code correctly. Yeah. Well, you have it in the zoning too, where if you can appeal the decision of the building inspector.
So we'll set up a work session. Yes.
Just one more time. So it's possible that within 60 days, we would have a by right R1 zone that allows a 5,000 square foot lot in, I'm not saying it's happened, but it's possible that within 60 days we'd have by right on a new subdivision, an R1 zone in our county would have a 5,000 square foot lot minimum on sewer. And our city in 60 days will have a 7,500 square, inside of, with all these highways and all these interstates and all these sewers and all these schools, we can't just write this same language and at the same time adopt it at a city level. And I'm not saying it will go through city council, and I'm not saying it might not get hung up, but on new roads and new subdivisions, by right, at least at a minimum, have the same flexibility that our county has. We can't. It just seems. Maybe it's just because I haven't been in city government, but it seems so simple.
There's a way to get there. I just want to get there. Smart. So I just
let me jump in on that. So my wife and I were talking about that very same thing the other day with the current R1 standards. Yes, she talks zoning with me, so God love her. And I don't see where every neighborhood that comes in through our system seems to be either a PUD, an RTZ, an RT, RT1, or something of that nature, which is combining and getting more density out of the property. I don't see a traditional R1 neighborhood in the city even coming down the pipe any longer. I really don't. So to Ethan's point, I think that's obviously one of the things we can look at that's easy pickings, the low-hanging fruit, because we're going to have loosen that up or tightening those lot sizes. Because that's just, we're doing it anyways. Yeah. So that's just what I'm seeing across the city.
And our PUD's not being used correctly, like it should be used. You know, what the true intent of the PUD was. But it's the only tool you have. You know, it's a much larger conversation.
But just for the record, theoretically, right now, Planning Commission could make the exact same motion that it just made in regards to that gray column regarding our city zoning.
Yeah, and I can have it. I mean, we can have it
if it so choose.
If it so choose to direct staff to do that.
Yep.
I don't make motions. Well, I think that would. I mean, there's a public process for that. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to usurp the administration either, but I just think it's going to become even more pressing, and we don't meet again for 30 days. So best case scenario is the city is trailing behind the county in regards to its flexibility.
That's what we tried to point out in the staff report. You know, the county would now have a zone that you can't even do in the city. You can by RTZ, of course, and PUD, but the county's regs, just like the city, it needs to be updated. So hopefully we can take some things we learned on the city and apply that to the county. You know.
Any comments on the minutes? I wasn't here. Motion to approve the minutes? We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Did you want to make a motion to adjourn? We normally leave that to Barry.